is just arrived. We saw a little bit earlier the Milwaukee Police Incident Command Center arrive. So multiple big vehicles arriving for a long night ahead. And just a lot of different people trying to respond to this incident. And again, just to give you an idea, we're a few blocks away from where Molson Coors is, and this is the scene, just a few blocks away. So imagine just how much crazier it is where some of our other reporters are at this time. But as other people have said, as I've heard Steve said, as I've heard Tom said, they're seeing more agencies pull up to the scene. We're seeing the same thing on this side as well. And actually, I see some ATF officers, if my cameraman can show you, they are just showed up here and are walking down towards the scene. Also, the public information officer for the Milwaukee Police Department did show up in this area maybe about 10 minutes ago. We asked her if there's anything that she could tell us about this situation, but she said right now it's still all really developing. So hopefully we'll be able to learn something soon for them. But for now, back to you.
That's our Lauren Linder on scene there, about 37th and State, or 37th and Highland. Sorry, we're kind of looking at that square block area, basically between 37th to all the way up to 40th. North end would be Highland, south end would be State Street, the campus there. I want to pass along a couple of nuggets that we are getting. So these are things that are confirmed. They're coming from official sources. First, this from the Marquette Police Department. So this would be the campus police force on Marquette, which isn't terribly far from this location. Marquette police are responding with MPD to reports of a critical incident at Molson Coors. There is no active threat to campus at this time, and no buildings needed to go on lockdown. Now that for Marquette University, which is blocks, if not miles away, at its like
probably about 6 blocks away. Wisconsin Avenue.
Right, on its far western end there on Wisconsin. We're going to go back out to our Steve Shamraz. He's been on scene reporting on the tactical response as well. Steve?
Yeah, we're at 37th and Highland, where it is quiet. It is eerily quiet for all the law enforcement that is here. Without giving anything tactically away, as more law enforcement continues to show up, they are moving south of our position here. So I am standing, a sheriff's vehicle is just roaring past me here. I am standing directly across the street from that square glass and brick building, which is the headquarters for Molson Coors here in Milwaukee. Everything is going on south of that is where all the law enforcement is going, but we can't see anything from where we are that would indicate where all the attention is being focused right now. Haven't seen any new law enforcement show up here in about 10 minutes. There were a couple of sheriff's command vehicles that came through here a little bit ago, but it is eerie quiet. Everybody is just standing around. Nobody is coming out of Harley-Davidson, which is just on the north side of Highland at 37th Street. That building, we have been told through emails from corporate, is also on lockdown. We did see some school kids on our way here as we kind of worked our way in from the east, from the Avenues West neighborhood. There were some school kids on the streets. I know schools are on lockdown now, so that's going to be a little bit more difficult as, kids aren't able to get home at the end of the school day. That's the time of the day we're in right now. But it's quiet. Just people in the neighborhood who live here on their porches. Anybody else has been told to stay away. Police have locked this area down tight. And guys, the word right now is just quiet. It's spooky quiet.
All right, Steve, keep us updated there. We want to let our viewers know we continue to monitor this breaking news situation at Molson Coors. And we are joined now by Steve Peterson, who many of you may know was a sheriff's detective and public information officer with the Waukesha County Sheriff's Department. And Steve, we appreciate you joining us by phone right now. We know you are monitoring the situation, at least on TV, and are seeing some of these live pictures. From your expertise involved in a number of active shooting situations, critical incident situations, what are you seeing and what can you tell us is going on?
Well, hey, Charles, this is, just by viewing this is a very significant event. In fact, when this was unfolding, I was actually in downtown Milwaukee in the area of Milwaukee Police Headquarters, and I was commenting to myself, thinking, I have never seen so many law enforcement vehicles, and they were all heading west on State Street before. So immediately I knew that there was a major incident going on. What I guess I could theorize by looking at, you can see that whole Miller Coors complex there is huge, and the main office building is a huge building. It looks like to me that there are tactical assets that are being called in from surrounding jurisdictions, not just within the city of Milwaukee, but from Milwaukee County and probably outside of Milwaukee County. And I'm pretty sure the reason for that would be because that building is so big, they need those extra tactical components in there to help clear that building, because they have to make sure that the threat is gone, there's not another threat in there. And when they clear those buildings, sometimes that develops into a slow, methodical process. And I think they're calling in for extra assets, which is why you're seeing those tactical components from surrounding law enforcement agencies.
And Steve, stay with us, because we're also watching a live picture that Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett has arrived on the scene as well. We are going to keep an eye on that to see if he is going to update us or if we're going to wait for Chief Morales in this particular situation. You talked about the number of assets on the scene right now and also coming from other jurisdictions. You talked that this is a large campus, a big facility. They would all be trained to do these types of things together, right? I mean, they're constantly practicing for these types of situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And while the various law enforcement departments, especially from surrounding areas, they may not train with each other as often as they like, but what they do know is they're all on the same playbook. They know what the procedures are. They know what needs to be done, and the trade craft, so to speak. So when it comes from that standpoint of all these assets in there and working together, I know it's going slowly, but it's moving smoothly.
We're talking with former Waukesha County Detective Steve Peterson, who's joining us, offering some expertise on the pictures that we're looking at here on scene of breaking news in the Molson Coors campus. Reports of an active shooter, MPD only confirming that it's a critical incident. We do have a sourced indication from close to the Milwaukee Police Department that there are multiple casualties, and it's only been defined as such. Steve, as you look at the pictures here, is there anything that the actions that officers are taking, the stance they're taking, how quickly they're moving, putting things on, taking things off, anything that you've seen here that would indicate to you whether or not they're still looking for someone on this scene?
Well, just at my first glance, just from the posture where your camera was before, where they were showing Mayor Barrett, the fact that they're allowing Mayor Barrett inside one perimeter of probably several perimeters would lead me to believe that the threat and the active shooting has ended. That doesn't mean necessarily that from a tactical standpoint, the problem is over, but it just appears to me that there just doesn't seem to be that sense of urgency of officers running toward the problem. And that would be my best guess.
All right. Thank you again for giving us perspective, Steve, from your law enforcement background. We want to shift gears and go to one of our it looks as if, though, we're seeing Chief slowly making his way, and once he gets to the podium, we will cut to him. But first, let's go to Sean Gallagher, who is not too far away at a bar where a number of employees are watching all of this unfold.
Yeah, that's right. We're in a bar. It's Spitfires, which is on State Street, a little bit more than a quarter mile away from the scene, and tried to see if anybody was up for talking at this time. Understandably, nobody really wants to chat right now, but I've seen a lot of people glued to their phones trying to get in touch with loved ones. Also, watching this coverage just like everybody else, trying to figure out what's going on. They obviously know they're safe, but a lot of people that I talk to in simple conversation, not aware if anybody else that they may know is hurt from this situation. But everybody right now really kind of counting their blessings that they're okay, but a lot of people really nervous after everything that's gone down over at the Miller plant.
That's Sean Gallagher, a bar nearby Molson Coors where other employees are standing. Imagine with very much interest as to what is happening at their workplace. We have multiple crews on the scene. We do know that Mayor Barrett has just arrived as well. We know that Chief Morales is on the scene. And we want to now go to Vinny. You've got some new information?
So we're going to want to make sure that we're attributing this accurately. This is not confirmed at this point by TMJ4 News, but Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel is reporting 7 people dead on this scene, including the shooter. That again coming from JS Online. That is not confirmed by TMJ4 News, but we are hearing 7 dead, including the shooter, that being reported by JS Online.
Let's go live now out to the scene at Freighter Hospital where we have Rebecca Clump. Rebecca?
We are actually out here at Freighter Hospital where we have seen such a huge security presence. We haven't seen a lot of ambulances actually come into Freighter, but what we have seen are security guards posted all around the emergency entrance, and we believe they are trying to keep that area as clear as possible. They're not really letting any cars kind of slow down there or move in. We know earlier we saw those ambulances staged up. Tom, I believe, showed us those ambulances outside of Miller Coors staged up along the way. Now, we don't know if ambulances have already arrived and brought in victims or if they are waiting to take those people out of the building after it's secure and then get them here. From the looks of how things are happening here at Freighter, though, they are just trying to keep everything open so that they can access the emergency department as quickly as possible, keep all those lanes clear so that the ambulances can get in and out of here as quickly as possible. And again, I said we have not seen multiple ambulances arrive here. I don't know if they arrived before we were able to make it here to Freighter, or if those victims, which we have seen at other active shooters, if those victims are still inside waiting to be brought out because it isn't safe yet for them to get them to safety. So Freighter Hospital here is obviously on standby. They're ready to accept whoever else is going to be coming from the Miller Coors campus. They have already told us we are at their staging area. They have moved us out away from the emergency room department because they do want to keep everything clear and open. Reporting live at Freighter, Rebecca Clough, TMJ4 News.
All right, Rebecca Clough outside Freighter, where, again, that's the level 1 trauma center. So if there is a victim who is severely injured, that person typically would go to that level 1 trauma.
All right, situation developing rapidly right now. We want to go to Tom Durian, who has been on the scene and watching and monitoring a lot of movement among law enforcement. What have you been able to see now, Tom?
Yeah, Charles, where we are right now, and I know that you guys have seen some more pictures from this over the last hour or so, it has definitely quieted down as far as the movement of officers and tactical unit officers. You can see some coming up this driveway right now, and I can tell you this, over the last about 5 minutes, I have seen a few employees that did not want to talk, understandably, but that have got in their cars in this parking garage that is next to us and have left the campus. And to me, a couple of them walked all the way around from State Street up into Valete and then back here onto Highland to get to their cars that are in this parking garage here, which is next to the Molson Coors headquarters. And where you see those officers walking up right now, to me it appears they are going into the back of the Molson Coors headquarters, where we know, and we have said, several people have told us they are on lockdown at this moment. We have not seen really any movement from them at this point, any people in that building, but as we mentioned, whatever action was happening down there on State Street. And we can see right now another employee getting their car and leaving here at Molson Coors. We'll continue to gather some more information, see if anybody can give us some insight onto what's happening inside. Back to you guys.
Before we send it into, that's our Tom Durian there live at the scene. Before we send it into our Carol Meekins in the today's TMJ4 newsroom, again, we have been reporting sourced information from JS Online, which is saying 7 people dead, including the shooter. My police source that indicated earlier multiple casualties is also confirming that the shooter is likely deceased and that there is not a second person that they're looking for. Now, again, that's not confirmed information. But that is a source close to Milwaukee Police Department who's indicating that there is not a second shooter that they're looking for right now, and that the original shooter is, in fact, likely dead. That jives with what we're hearing from the report in JS Online.
And some of the early reporting that you were hearing, that we knew that casualties were involved. And so what we were initially talking about, an active shooting situation, now seems to be turning into a mass shooting investigation.
And recovery. And
recovery, as Carol Meekins is in the newsroom. And Carol, we did just see a live picture. It looked like Ernell Lucas, the Milwaukee County Sheriff, leaving the scene, waiting for an update from Ernell, or I should say, Chief Morales, to give us an update on the situation. What have you learned so far now?
Well, obviously, Charles, this is very sad. Everybody in Milwaukee, Miller Coors, Molson Coors, a very iconic place for Milwaukee. We take pride in it. We just got word, TMJ4 just got word that Molson Coors CEO was in Houston at the time of this event today. He was at the annual distributors conference. CEO Gavin Hattersley canceled the last session. He told the group, and he was very emotional, that he said the safety of his people is most important, so it was a very difficult situation. He's flying back from Houston from that conference, saying this is obviously a difficult and tumultuous time for everybody in the company, and we know it's a large organization. So this is something that all of us in Milwaukee, and we feel that Molson Coors, Miller Coors, hard to get rid of the Miller, it's dear to our hearts to know something like this has taken place. Very difficult, and obviously CEO, who was not in town, it has to just be crestfalling for him. Very difficult.
You're so right there, Carol. A painful time for the company, a painful time for our community, because Molson Coors, known as Miller, so ingrained in who we are in Milwaukee, the brew city that we are, this iconic place that so many people, I remember when I got married and I had a lot of out-of-town guests coming in, and one of the places they wanted to go to was to do the beer tour. And so such a sad day, because all across the country there's going to be news about a mass shooting in Milwaukee at Molson Coors, Brew City. And based on the reporting from the Journal Sentinel, it is 7 people who are dead, including the shooter. The question now, as we wait for law enforcement and investigators to come forward, what it is that led to this shooting. What was going on? And Shannon, I know these are questions the community will want answered.
Definitely, and as we wait for those answers, we did have many of our reporters who were out in the field as this was all unfolding. We've been on air for more than an hour now, who spoke with many of the residents who live around that campus. Let's listen into what they were feeling and heard moments as this all unfolded.
So what did you see when you looked outside the window?
Well, I came home and there was nothing. I know there was a cop car parked across the street, but the streets were open. I came and I parked in my garage, got my stuff in the house, and then when I looked out my back door, I saw the cop turning the signals on, and she was coming over, so she called me, and she's like, "Hey, your street's blocked off." I was like, "What?" So when I looked out the front, I saw it blocked off, but I haven't seen any commotion.
And obviously, we're trying to figure out what's going on, piecing it all together here, but typically, not something you're used to when you come home.
Yeah, not this kind of.
Do you know your neighbors well?
Yeah, my parents have actually owned this house for 37 years. They moved to Georgia 2 years ago. I'm living here now, so this is pretty much where I grew up. They raised me and all 5 of my siblings.
On Potomac?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And police obviously are going in and out of a home on about 8200 Potomac. Do you know any of the neighbors there?
Some of them have kind of started phasing out. We've got a couple of the older homeowners, but I mean, it's fairly quiet. I don't really know anybody or interact with too many people anymore, but I don't have any problems with anyone either.
What do you think that they're piecing it all together from an active shooter situation that happened at Miller Coors this afternoon?
I have it's just beyond me. I didn't even know about the shooting situation either. So yeah, this is all just brand news to me right now.
And you?
Yeah, I come visit her all the time. Like, this has never been anything that I would have ever thought would have happened around here. So, come here, pretty often, like once a week at least, and have never seen anything like this. So it was pretty, like I said, I just normally pull around that street there, saw the cop car, and it cautioned off, and I was just like, okay, we'll just go around, and then saw the street was cautioned off, called her and was like, what's going on? And she's just like, well, I know that street has a cop car, and then she came outside and was like, oh, it's taped off. So I just walked around the tape.
Again, you were listening in to a number of residents who were responding to all the activity around the campus of Molson Coors. I want to send it out to Sean Gallagher. He is live at a bar just feet away from where this has all unfolded, where more and more employees are walking in after learning that there was an active shooter on the campus and possibly some fatalities.
Yeah, Shannon, I'm here at the Spitfire Bar, which is about a quarter mile or so west of the Molson Coors campus. And I will tell you, within the last 15 minutes or so, more and more people are coming in here. I just spoke with one of the bartenders and the owner here, and she says that this is a place frequented by employees there. She's nervous that one of the employees who may have been killed in this situation may be a regular here at this bar. She says a lot of the employees that came here, they say that they didn't even get a chance to bring their wallets. So she's actually pouring a couple of beers for them for absolutely free, as everybody's glued to their phones, glued to the TV, trying to figure out exactly what happened. We tried to speak with several members here, but understandably they are a little nervous about talking right now after this terrible situation has happened. We're giving them as much space as we can, but just want to show you that there are people out here grieving and trying to really figure out everything that's going on.
All right, that is our Sean Gallagher, who is at a nearby bar, and where several members who work at Molson Coors are watching all of this tragedy unfold right in front of them. We are waiting for some new information from the Milwaukee Police Chief, as well as Mayor Tom Barrett, who is on the scene. And as you know, as we have been following this story for the last hour or so now, as these details come out and what the Journal-Sentinel is reporting, that 7 are killed, including the shooter in this situation. This active shooting situation has now become a mass shooting here in Milwaukee, as we see a number of law enforcement, ATF, FBI, sort of wrapping up in this particular situation. We have seen a number of visuals from that location as they were getting in place to see what was going on. And Steve Peterson joins us again. He is with, or used to be with, the Waukesha County Sheriff's Department. And Steve, as we are now hearing, at least from the Journal-Sentinel reporting, that 7 are dead, including the shooter, as you were watching some of these details, it is very clear now that this is no longer an active shooting situation. So what changes for law enforcement as they now go forward?
Well, I think it's still a pretty fluid and active situation from the standpoint of, as I mentioned before, the SWAT teams especially, they've got to go in and clear the buildings or buildings wherever this situation took place, and that can take a long time. It also, at least it appears to me, that there's those federal assets that are arriving on the scene. And, of course, they're coming in to lend whatever help, expertise, or act as a conduit for additional help that may be required down the road. And it's also moving into an investigation stage. But right now, I think they're still in a clearing the scene type of operation. And I think the investigator standpoint, they're there, but they're not actively engaged in the building. And again, that's my best estimation from what I see.
We're talking with former Waukesha County Detective Steve Peterson. Interesting, just quickly before we go to Carol in our newsroom, what Steve was talking about there is the process of clearing these areas. I'm told by a source that there are about 1,000 employees on scene. Police have at least some interest in touching base with each and every one of those employees before they are cleared to leave the scene as they begin to put together their investigation. So that is going to take a long time.
So, Steve, stand by. We're going to use your help for the next few minutes as well. But we do want to join Carol Meekins, who's been on the phone talking to folks. And, Carol, what is the latest?
Well, I just want to make sure that I give an alert to parents of Story School students. They are saying that because of today's incident in the neighborhood around Molson Coors, Milwaukee Public Schools are not able to allow parents into the building, but they do want to let people know that all students and staff in the building are safe. But they cannot let the parents come to the school building to pick up their students, and they cannot let any of the students or staff leave the building at this time. Very important. All students and staff, though, will remain safe. That's the best news and the most important part. And Story School and MPD will give clearance, and they will let us know, and we will let you know, parents, when you can go to the school. Just want to make sure we get that word out to parents, because it's got to be some anxious moments out there for many people.
Anxious indeed for all, not just those parents, but for now what you were hearing, Vince, 1,000 employees inside that they are now going to want to have contact, especially those who were closer to the situation and observe this horrible tragedy unfold in front of them this afternoon. We are now going to join Steve Shamraz, who's been on the scene. And Steve, we're getting a situation that it looks like things are wrapping up in terms of an active shooting situation, but still an active location. Okay, sorry, we thought we had Steve Shamraz.
As you mentioned, though, a number of law enforcement agencies on the scene, and even though the activity of the shooting may be over, we are just beginning the investigation. Yep. Vinny, you mentioned from your source in response to the number of employees, this impacts not only the fact of them getting out safely, but then having to be interviewed on what they may have seen or heard moments before and during the situation. Again, we are still waiting on an update from Chief Morales or possibly Sheriff Ernell Lucas and the other law enforcement agencies who have now joined the scene here on the Molson Coors campus, where again, over an hour ago, calls were police responded to calls at that campus. We are now reporting from the source of JS Online that 7 are dead, but we will wait to confirm much of that information from our police sources when they reach the podium. I want to send it out, though, to Steve Shamraz, who has been on the scene for the last hour at one of the staging points on 37th and Highland, I believe.
Shannon, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Yeah, we're at 37th and Highland. Since we last spoke, another wave of law enforcement showed up. A lot of Milwaukee County sheriffs, deputies in their green fatigues showed up, and they all went south of where we are here. But again, it's been quiet other than that. I want to jump in the conversation. We've been talking, we've reported with the Journal Sentinel is put up on JS Online, 7 dead, including the shooter. I'm told by a law enforcement source that there is some confusion right now about numbers. So my law enforcement source, who I trust a great deal, says there is some confusion right now. They are trying to identify if one of the potential victims is the shooter. So total numbers, again, JS is reporting what they're reporting. They could very well be correct at the end of the day, but this is a very fluid situation, and so much of this confusion, and the reason why we're getting so many more law enforcement personnel here on the scene, may be that this is a fluid situation, and they don't know if among the potentially dead is the gunman. So that is kind of where we are right now. Law enforcement, the word that was used is confusion. So that's what's going on inside. It's probably why it's so quiet here, because everybody is wherever in this massive complex this is going on, trying to sort out the chaos that probably rained down inside there for the time that this gunman was firing upon all those poor innocent people inside this building. So I know JS is reporting what they are, but let's hold off. Confusion is the word I'm hearing from my friends in law enforcement. They don't know 100% if the gunman is among the dead. Very well could be, but they are being very cautious right now, and that's why we are seeing these floods of additional law enforcement going in. Again, another vehicle pulling up right now. The FBI is on the scene as well. They keep arriving in waves, going in to try and get a handle on whatever's going on in there to add all this up. Guys?
Our Steve Shamraz on the scene, and let me piggyback off of what Steve's sourced information is there as well. I'm hearing the same thing from my source close to MPD as well, that they are not committed at this point to that number that JS is reporting of 7 total victims. And the language my source used in reference to the possible shooter is believed to be deceased. So it looks like that's what they think, but again, perhaps are waiting for confirmation. And as Steve indicated, so now we have Steve's source and mine as well, indicating that they're not particularly set on that 7 dead number. Tragic nonetheless.
And I know we want to get to Lauren Linder, but I know we still have Steve Peterson on the line as well. And Steve, I wanted to see if you could speak to this, quote, confusion that goes on. I know that you understand our role in the media, and as a former public information officer, you also were on the scene of the Sikh temple shooting, where 7 people were killed, and then police ended up killing the shooter in that situation. But walk through why it does take this kind of time to get this information out, and how there can be confusion over the number of victims.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the things where everybody has to take a breath, and you know, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here with you folks, you know, sometimes that first information that comes out is the one that's most subject to change. And this is for a variety of reasons. Because you've got this mass shooting going on, you've got this active shooter. So as police now are going in to contain the situation and stop the shooting, they're getting all kinds of information from people calling in to the police dispatcher, to police people that, you know, ostensibly could be running out of the building, saying there's 3 guys in there shooting, or there's 1 guy, or whatever. So the police have to, you know, try to process all this information very quickly, and then if it has come to an end, now they start kind of piggybacking and going back and saying, okay, what were the reports here? We're hearing this. Okay, that's not correct. But do we need to follow up? Could we possibly have another suspect in the building someplace? So that's that confusion. And then coupled with that is sometimes information that goes out, you know, through police channels too, that could be incorrect. And it's no fault of anybody. It's just the dynamic of the situation on how the information is being reported at the time.
That's why I'm glad you're able to clarify that, because what I do remember in the Sikh temple shooting, and we're waiting to learn details about this, is what is sort of described as the fog of war. I mean, if you have an active shooter that moves from one location to another, the reports out might be there are 2 shooters, right? But it could have been the same shooter, only that the shooter was moving to different locations. And I thought some of that unfolded at the Sikh temple shooting.
Sure, and there's that, and then there can also be that component of that law enforcement first responder response. It could be the plainclothes detective that's 3 blocks away that's responding, and, you know, he's running into the building looking for the shooter, and the employee, the laper, whatever, may think that person is part of the problem and not realizing that he's one of the first responders.
So we appreciate you giving us that insight of what's going on at this particular scene as law enforcement tries to go through the due diligence of what exactly unfolded there. We know that Lauren Linder, who has been on the scene monitoring this event as it has unfolded, one of the first to arrive there. And Lauren, what are you now seeing as you have now been on the scene close to 90 minutes?
Charles, it's still very active out here at this time. To give you an idea, I'm at 35th and State Street. This is where we arrived nearly 2 hours ago. Police are still arriving on the scene, unbelievably. We just saw some FBI officials come on scene and then go towards Molson Coors. We've seen some canine units coming out here as well, both from the Milwaukee Police Department and other agencies. I apologize if my mouth sounds a little bit cold right now because it is very cold outside, but Mayor Barrett also showed up on scene about a half an hour ago or so. We asked if he would talk right now, but he said he'll address the media a little bit later as he learns more information. We did see him walk towards the scene. We know that the Sheriff's Department is here, Police Department is here, Fire Department's here, ATF is here, the FBI is here. Now I see a man walking with State Patrol written on the back of his jacket. They're here as well. Lots of men and women in tactical gear going towards Molson Coors. Again, as I said, I arrived here first on scene about an hour and a half ago, and when I arrived, there were just a few vehicles out here. There's now hundreds, and they've now also, since I last spoke to you, we've been pushed further back from the scene. We were a little bit close on the other side of the street. Now they pushed us back across to the other side of State Street. As I said before, also the public information officer was here on scene a little bit earlier. And she said that it's still too early to be able to address the media. The situation is still very fluid, but there are a number of law enforcement agencies out here trying to help the people that are inside this facility at the Molson Coors Corporation. It's kind of amazing to see just the response out here today, including from paramedics who you don't typically see wearing hard helmets. And seeing just the sheer number of officers from the sheriff's department, from the police department, just running in with tactical gear. There's even right where I'm standing a Wauwatosa fire department truck. Just the sheer number of agencies that are responding to this is truly unbelievable, and hopefully that they're able to help some of these people who may have been in this situation. But for now, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Lauren. We appreciate your update. We just want to give you some clues about what's going on outside and impacting the neighborhood around. MPS is now telling parents that they can pick up their children at Story School, or their children can take the bus home, but they will not allow any children to walk home. The other thing you need to understand is that MCTS has also been impacted by this. We had Lauren Linder, who was on 35th and State. You have a major bus route right there, as well as a major bus route on Highland. They're asking that for those who may be taking the bus on either one of those routes to move this to the next stop at least 2 to 3 blocks away from where all of this is happening at the Molson Coors campus. Again, we are sitting and waiting to get a number of updates from law enforcement of the actual number of casualties and where they stand right now at this situation in the investigation. I want to send it into Carol Meekins, who's in our newsroom, with more.
Thank you very much, Shannon. You know, this is a very tense situation. I'm sure parents are very happy to know that their students and kids are safe and that they can go pick them up. Also, we just got word that about 15 minutes ago, Harley-Davidson no longer on lockdown. Employees are able to go about their normal business. So that is good news. So obviously the situation still very fluid, but a lot of questions and a lot of perhaps information to sort out the numbers. Of course, we've heard conflicting reports from certain sources that are telling us that they are not totally sure how many people are dead in this tragic incident. But again, Story School, as we mentioned earlier, parents can come and pick them up, and also the school is available if parents want to call. You can do that at this hour. So we're staying on top of anybody who might be impacted in that area. And for those of us who have been in this town for a long time, this is very rare. This has been basically a safe area. We don't have a lot of incidents of this sort, of this magnitude. And I can't remember the last time anything this horrific happened at Molson Coors or Miller Coors as we knew it back then. Back to both of you.
Our Carol Meekins live in our newsroom for us, getting updates on all the other people tangentially affected by what has happened today. Let's kind of reset here as we're at 7 minutes after 4 on today's TMJ4. What started as a report of an active shooter situation that we were hearing on police radio traffic, as well as seeing multiple reports on social media. Active shooter at the Molson Coors campus there, about 39th and Highland, 40th and State, that neighborhood. That was about 20 minutes after 2 this afternoon. We have since confirmed through sourced information from Milwaukee Police Department, multiple sources, Steve Shamraz, Charles, you've had sourced information, I've had it as well. We know multiple people are dead in this shooting at Molson Coors. Right now, as Carol was seeming to indicate, Steve's sources and mine as well, not committed to that number that Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel is reporting of 7 people dead, and my source indicating that they believe the gunman is among the dead. However, that's not yet confirmed. So that's where we stand on confirmed and semi-confirmed information at this hour, still very early in the investigation part of what is happening here. send it back out to our Tom Durian, who's been reporting from the scene for more than an hour now. Tom, what do you have?
Yeah, Vince, just to clarify, my source is saying the same thing that you've been talking about as well. I do want to tell you where we're standing right now is adjacent to the Molson Coors headquarters building. There's also a parking garage here. We're on Highland Street. You can also see right now, I believe there are more officers moving out of that area down on State Street as I talk to you. We have seen, I'd say, about a dozen people come and get their cars out of this parking garage. Understandably, they didn't want to go on camera, but they did tell me that they walked all the way around. So they went down State Street and came back around, and we just saw a group of about 4 or 5 more gentlemen do that just about 5 minutes ago, right before you came to us, pick up their vehicles. Here's another one coming out right now of this parking garage and head home, I would presume, for the day. We still have seen, we just saw 3 Waukesha County sheriff's trucks come down here with lights and sirens in a pretty big hurry while they are obviously kind of getting a handle on the situation down there on State Street. They are still bringing in more officers and backup from throughout the area. Obviously, in a situation like this, they will bring mutual aid officers and deputies from other areas to assist them. You can imagine as we get a little bit closer, as they get more information here, we will have people at some point be let out of their jobs here, their offices at Molson Coors and the factory for the day as they talk to those people and get their information and maybe possibly what they would have seen or maybe not seen anything if they're over here in the headquarters building. They will process all that and start to let people go home for the day. I can't tell you when that'll happen. I can just tell you that a couple of these guys that came by and told me they were contractors here at Molson Coors were able to leave, presumably because they don't work for the company itself, and take their vehicles and get out of this area right now. But the scene right here from Highland was the scene of quite a lot of action earlier down on State Street, but it has calmed down considerably as we wait for more information from Milwaukee PD and others as to what happened inside the factory down there today here at Molson Coors. We'll send it back inside to you.
Tom Durian reporting from Molson Coors for us as this story continues to unfold and to develop. We want to share with you right now what is known as Broadcastify. This is radio traffic that will take us inside the situation of what police were dealing with at the moment the active shooting situation was unfolding. And I have not had a chance to listen to it. I know these are usually pretty intense as you hear law enforcement talking about what is going on. So we're going to listen in together.
Response 3939 West Highland Boulevard. Active shooter. What report of one person shot at Miller Coors, 3939 West Highland Boulevard.
Okay, so that was not the actual call of what law enforcement were saying, but that's one of the 911 calls that was dispatched coming in. And we do have more of what was coming in to the 911 operators. Let's listen into this call.
3939 West Highland Boulevard. 3939 West Highland Boulevard. Miller Coors for active shooter. One person shot. I copy. Is the scene safe? It's currently not confirmed as a safe scene.
And it's amazing how these dispatchers remain so calm, dispatching that information, getting those officers to the critical situation in a manner in which they can effectively do their job. Again, what you were listening to was what we call radio traffic, the conversation between the dispatcher and those law enforcement agents who are around the area responding to the scene. You're taking a live look again. I believe this is 35th and Highland, 35th and State, excuse me, where most of the first responders have been parking their vehicles and getting heads up from those who are on scene and heading down into the situation. We again are looking at what is an active investigation into a shooting at Molson Coors campus on State and Highland. A number of employees impacted by this. This happening just after about 2:30 this afternoon, Charles?
It's somewhere in that range, around 2:30, that we were able to first learn of this information. And we're now getting response from city leaders, and Alderman Russell Stamper, who represents the 15th Aldermanic District, talking about that he's calling on colleagues and residents to share in their offering of sincere condolences to the family and friends of the victims of today's tragic, horrific mass workplace shooting at Molson Coors. He goes on to say this is a vile and heinous, deadly violence that was perpetrated at the brewery complex today, has no place in our society and makes no sense. And he says we must work diligently each day to value our brothers and sisters. We must all try to keep alive the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said so poignantly, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that." That from Alderman Stamper. Steve Shamraz, you have been on the scene monitoring the situation and try to see if we can get to the number of the number of fatalities.
Yeah, the number that's been reported in some other outlets is 7, and that's 6 victims, 1 including the shooter. Vince Vitrano has a law enforcement source. I have my source that are saying those numbers might not hold. They very well could, but there is, in the one word that my police source used is confusion. And we have not heard from anybody in the top ranks of MPD yet, and we're 2+ hours on from when this started. So to not hear from anybody from MPD yet suggests to me that they are still doing the math on this. They are still putting this together. They may still be going room to room inside buildings, for all we know, trying to figure out if there are additional victims. Given that the bomb squad is here in very large numbers of folks from Milwaukee County Sheriff EOD, the FBI has EOD experts here as well, explosive ordnance demolition, EOD, that they may be concerned that there are other concerns, maybe booby traps in the building. They're still doing the math on this, is what all of this indicates to me as somebody who has seen far too many terrible things like this happen in a 20+ year reporting career. Is, we're 2 hours on from when this started. Yes, Charles, go ahead.
We have some new information coming in, and that's why we want to send it over to Rebecca Clough, who's been outside the hospitals. And you have some new information, Rebecca?
Yes, Charles. We actually checked in with Freighter Hospital to find out if there would be some sort of a press conference briefing. The news that we're hearing is there are no victims that have been brought to Freighter Hospital. Now, what that means, Freighter themselves, they aren't sure. Does that mean that there are victims inside that building still that have not been brought out and have not been transported? They don't know if that means that there's not anyone alive who has been shot that can come here. They really have no idea. They said they are on standby right now. They're waiting for word from police as to what's going to happen moving forward, but they have not had a single victim brought here to Freighter Hospital from this critical incident, and they are just waiting. They have their emergency room open. They're keeping all the entryways free. They have security circling this building, trying to keep it open as much as possible in case any ambulances do need to come here with a critically injured victim. But as of right now, no one has been brought to Freighter Hospital from the Molson Coors shooting. So we are standing by to wait for some more information and to see if that does hopefully change as we go forward, and that there are some people who can be helped from this incident. Back to you, Charles.
All right, Rebecca Clough reporting that there were no one was transported to any of the local hospitals out by where she is. Freighter would be the Trauma One Center. So
and we also noticed from talking with many of the reporters that were on scene that none of them had seen any of those emergency vehicles exit the yellow tape as they had seen them enter in so frantically with the lights blaring and the sirens going. So again, we are waiting on a briefing from law enforcement in regards to a shooting that has happened at Molson Coors campus here in the heart of Milwaukee. Again, in a neighborhood, you are talking about 3 to 4 neighborhoods that have been impacted by this. The Miller Valley, Concordia, Merrill Park, Martin Drive, All of these neighborhoods surround that campus, and many of them have been impacted, whether it was Story School that had to go on lockdown for a few hours and wait for parents to be able to pick them up. Marquette University also on high alert, the high school on high alert. A number of daycare centers that are around that area. And then, of course, mass transit, public transportation, MCTS having to reroute buses along Highland, 35th, and State Street because of this incident that happened over 2 hours ago. And as we speak, we are still waiting to hear from either Chief Morales, Sheriff Arnell Lucas, ATF, as we saw on scene, and possibly the FBI to give us an update on what transpired at this workplace incident. And we have a number of reporters on the field as well as the anchors here on the desk working their sources to find out the truth about how many were impacted and if the shooter has been caught.
And Tom Durian has been outside Molson Coors for most of the afternoon as all of this tragedy unfolded. And Tom, from your vantage point, you have been able to see a number of law enforcement folks go beyond those gates that we are able to see better through the camera. And that seems to be where a lot of police activity took place.
Yeah, Charles, that was where a lot of the activity was taking place earlier, and it's starting to ramp back up again, but in a different way. Earlier, we saw the tactical officers making their way into presumably where this shooting happened and trying to contain that scene. Now we have seen what appear to be some employees with police officers down at the bottom of the camera shot there at the bottom of this driveway. I also did see about a dozen officers in their tactical gear walk up this driveway just about 3 or 4 minutes ago and head into what I believe is the back of the headquarters here at Molson Coors. This building, as we've mentioned many times, is on lockdown as well as the entire campus, but it has been very, very quiet. Not many people moving or coming or going. When you listen to those Broadcastify earlier, the address that was given out of Highland Avenue is where the headquarters is here. Of course, the activity seems to have been further down there on State Street, somewhere in the middle of where the production line is. But just about 3 or 4 minutes ago, we did see several officers in tactical gear, sort of the Army-looking gear, the green camouflage, walk up this driveway here and go into the back of the Molson Coors headquarters building. As you know, at this point, if the active shooter is indeed dead, as we have heard from some sources, they are now going to make sure they go through the building here and they make sure that everybody is safe and that there is nobody else that could be involved in any wrongdoing. As we have talked about all afternoon long, many of the people here at this company are on lockdown, and that includes all the buildings here. So they will go through those buildings one by one to make sure and talk to all the employees in there and go floor to floor to make sure everybody's okay, to get whatever information they need to get. And then we presume we will start to see people leave at some point, but this could be minutes, if not hours from now, as we've seen these types of things happen. And you're looking right now at folks walking out of the building. Give me just a second here and I can get a better vantage point on what's happening. But you can see that there are some more people walking out right now. Did you see where they came from?
Same way, on the left side.
Okay, so they came from the back part of the headquarters here. You just saw that on the screen. I was across the driveway trying to get a better look at it. But that's the situation up here. Again, employees here and there starting to leave Miller Coors, or contractors at the very least, that say they walked around to get their cars. Back to you guys.
All right, Tom Durian, we appreciate your reporting from that location and providing clarity about what exactly unfolded there in which buildings.
I think it's interesting, too. You know, Tom mentioned seeing the bomb squad out there. Steve Shammer has mentioned that as well. We've talked about the tactical gear, and we've seen a lot of personal vehicles on scene. Steve pointed that out. If you're on the tactical unit, if you're a sharpshooter, for example, if you have that specialized training, you are always ready to go and can be called in at a moment's notice. Right. So that's why you're seeing a lot of these guys getting out of their personal vehicles, because they respond immediately to the scene and they have that gear ready to go. Bomb squad in these types of situations very often is called out, not necessarily because there's an indication of any explosives, but when you have an active shooter, you don't know what his or her intent may be. So you want to make sure that that squad is there in case, as they go through and clear these rooms and clear these buildings, make sure that there's nothing to that effect that could be involved. So just because the bomb squad is there doesn't necessarily mean there was an indication or a report of explosives, but simply on the safe side as they go to clear this scene, making sure that everybody's safe.
Let's join Sean Gallagher, who has been standing by with folks at a bar watching this tragedy unfold on TV. And Sean, what do you have?
Yeah, Charles, I'm sorry, you probably broke up there, but we're at Spitfires on State right now, which has really become a haven for a lot of those employees who needed to get out and find somewhere to be. They're all glued to the TVs, just trying to figure out a little bit more information along with the rest of us. I have the owner of the bar right now, Andy. I mean, this is a much different day for you, but you're used to having these employees here.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of these are regular customers that we have daily. We call them more friends than we do customers. So when we've actually done their weddings, they're good people. They're here all the time. So we made sure we had a place for them to go. We knew they got evacuated. A lot of them didn't have their money on them, their keys, jackets. So we wanted to make sure they had a place to go, sit around. We got them drinking. We're going to feed them. We're going to make sure they're taken care of.
It sounds, I mean, seems like you're a little emotional right now just talking about this. You've been texting with a couple of these people as well.
Yes, absolutely. I wanted to make sure that they got the word out to other employees that they can come here. Like I said, we know most of them, but anyone's welcome to come down here from there. It's just we want to make sure they have a place to go.
Are you nervous that some of the people that usually come in here may never come in here again?
No, it definitely went through our mind. We had to think about it. We had to make phone calls. Besides our family calling us to make sure we were safe, I want to make sure they were as well. Not to mention a lot of first responders are our friends, fire, police. So we put a lot of messages out and let everyone know.
Well, thank you, Andy. And Tammy, his wife, co-owner here, you got a phone call that was pretty special not too long ago.
Yes, a random woman called and decided that she wanted to donate money to, well, I don't know if I could call it a cause, but to the Miller workers for $100, and then she asked how many were here, and I told her there's approximately 40 or 50, and she said, why don't you up that to $200? And I'll stay anonymous, but she did give me her name, and her name is Cheryl, so we would really like to thank her.
What does that mean to you, that somebody who's willing to open up their heart to this?
Well, I started tearing up right away, and I turned around and I told all the employees, and they said thank you very much. They're very appreciative.
Sean, we're going to cut Sean off right now. We have to go to another situation with Lauren Linder. You are standing by with an interview. Lauren, go ahead.
I'm here with Reggie Moore from the Office of Violence Prevention from the city of Milwaukee. Reggie, what do you have to say about the situation that's been unfolding here?
I mean, first of all, I just want to send, my thoughts and condolences to the company, to the employees and the families that have been impacted by what happened today. I'm not just here in my role, I also live in this neighborhood. And this is a very important company to the city, and we all have friends or know people who work there. And so, again, just my thoughts are with them.
You know people who work there. Have you heard their situations right now? Are they safe? Are they inside? Anywhere?
I've heard a lot of conflicting information, so it's nothing I want to speak to at this point. But yeah, just knowing that there's still people, who are in the company right now.
Well, what exactly does this say? I mean, in this area, you live out here. You're trying to prevent violence in this area, and when you hear about a shooting that's happening at a major company like Molson Coors, what do you have to say about that?
I mean, this is an issue that impacts every segment of our community, right? When we talk about schools, street corners, hospitals, etc., violence, can happen anywhere. And so, again, not knowing the specifics of the situation or the motivation of the shooter, those are all things that will unfold over the coming hours. But at the end of the day, we have to do everything possible to prevent this. This cannot become normalized, and no level of violence is acceptable in our city.
And what exactly will you do, especially after this type of event? Obviously, we have several types of events, but we haven't had one of this magnitude in a while. So what do you do to try to prevent something like this happening again?
So we have a close relationship with Milwaukee Public Schools. We know that there are several schools in this area. We know that there are many children who live in this area. So we want to encourage people, if they need support, particularly related to counseling or mental health, that they can reach out for that. Understanding, again, that there are going to be thousands of families who are impacted by what happened here today, and ensure that as a community that we're wrapping our arms around each other.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add right now about this developing situation?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for talking to us. And again, where I'm standing right now is State and 35th Street, and there's still a very active scene out here with multiple agencies. We'll send it right back to you.
All right. Thank you, Lauren Linder, having a discussion with the Director of Violence Prevention, Reggie Moore, who just got on scene. We want to send it back to the newsroom with Carol Meekins, who's been keeping us up to date on a lot of different statements coming out. And I believe now you have one from Molson Coors?
Yes, official tweet from Molson Coors Beverage Company's statement saying there's an active shooter situation in our Milwaukee facility. We are working closely with the Milwaukee Police Department. Our top priority is our employees employees, and we will provide updates in conjunction with the police as we are able, very similar to the statement we told you about when we told you that the CEO, Gavin Hattersley, was in Houston for a distributors conference, and he canceled his last session saying, "I have to leave." He was emotional. He said the safety of his people are the most important thing to him. So obviously a very sad day, in the words of Alderman Russell Stamper: sad, unthinkable, tragic. Back to you.
That's our Carol Meekins reporting live for us in the newsroom with the first we're hearing officially, anyway, from Molson Coors in response to this terrible incident. We know for sure multiple people shot and killed at Molson Coors here in Milwaukee. Exactly how many victims there are is still a matter of debate. As we've said, Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reporting 7 dead, including the shooter. Sourced information from a number of us here who have people who are close to or within MPD say that officials are not quite at that number in terms of confirming it, and not entirely 100% convinced that the shooter is among the dead, although all appearing to indicate that it is likely.
And that's why I'd like to bring back Steve Peterson, who used to work with the Waukesha County Sheriff's Department, a public information officer and detective as well. And Steve, can you hear me?
I can, Charles, yes.
So give me a sense here how laser focused law enforcement is now in trying to identify this shooter and what they would be going through to try to learn information about the shooter.
Yeah, well, and again, when I was speaking to you earlier, you know, they're trying to, you know, sew up all of the information that was being reported at the time the event was active. And I think as they can close the loop on that, and then, you know, be fairly certain that they don't have one other bad guy or another shooter running around, so to speak, then they'll focus on whom they believe to be the shooter, and then try to start their investigation, mainly with IDing them. And one other thing I just wanted to mention, as I was thinking about this as well, the location of Miller Coors and the location of, I think it's now the Specialized Police Division, it was the Neighborhood Task Force before, at 47th and Valete. That's the headquarters of the Tactical Enforcement Unit for the Milwaukee Police Department. And I'm not completely sure, but that time of day, there may have been a shift change going on at that police station there on 47th and Valete. And really, for all intents and purposes, that's a stone's throw from Miller Coors. So I think when it's all said and done, I think you were probably going to see a very, very fast law enforcement response to the area.
And that was our observation as well, Steve, that we could see how quickly law enforcement was responding, and then as more and more law enforcement arrived on the scene. So who's making that call to say that we need more than just MPD? At what point does it ramp up to call in all hands on deck?
Yeah, that's a leadership decision, obviously, from the agency that is in charge, which at this point is the Milwaukee Police Department. And they could be bringing in those additional law enforcement resources for a variety of reasons. You know, we spoke to before the enormous campus size. The building where we believe this all occurred in is a huge building, and that all has to be cleared. I think they're probably doing some forward thinking and saying, you know, some of these initial tactical teams that were in there, we got to get them out, give them a break, let's send someone else in. And then they're probably planning for pushing back the perimeter and really securing the area, and they're going to call in some additional help from traffic control, and that's where the mutual aid requests then are pushed out to the law enforcement agencies area-wide.
All right, Steve, we appreciate you standing by and providing this insight. The response is coming in. We heard from Alderman Stamper. I have seen that both our U.S. senators have responded. I'm trying to give a heads up into our control room if they are able to pull up a tweet from Senator Tammy Baldwin, who has just responded about this. We do have Senator Johnson as well. I'll go to that one as you. So here it is. This is from Senator Johnson saying, monitoring this frightening situation at an iconic Milwaukee brewery. Prayers go out to everyone affected. I also see that Gwen Moore has responded as well on this. There is a massive police presence at Milwaukee Miller's Coors, but I'm also going to, as I shuttle through my cell phone here, this is what Senator Baldwin responded to, saying gun violence has taken too many lives in Milwaukee, and the mass shooting today is heartbreaking. Thank the first responders who ran into harm's way and saved lives. My office is standing by to help MKE, Milwaukee community, in the wake of this tragedy. And I imagine we are going to hear a lot about this particular shooting, because so often these mass shootings do attract the attention for about 24 and 48 hours on this conversation that unfortunately we have been having way too long in this country about guns, about violence. How do you address the issue? What is happening in these particular situations?
How do you balance safety with people's rights to bear arms? How do you make sure that everyone is safe, right, in their workplace, as we all should be able to walk in our workplace safely and walk home at night to return back home? Let's send it out to Steve Shamraz, who is on scene. And I see you see a number of people where you're standing at 35th and Highland.
Yeah, Shannon, we've actually pointed our camera now in the other direction. We've been looking at the Molson Coors campus. This is now the Harley-Davidson facility, the Juneau campus, just north of 37th and Highland. And they were on lockdown for a good portion of the day as well. As you can see, it's quitting time, and they were actually letting people leave work. So whatever fear there was earlier in the day that had the Harley campus on lockdown appears to be over, as people are walking out of the buildings, they're getting in their cars, and they're going home. It's the end of the day. It's 4:30 now. The opposite side of the street, on the Molson Coors side of Highland, nobody's moving. All the cars are still where they were parked at the beginning of the day today, outside the corporate headquarters at 39th and Highland, as that building is still frozen. Law enforcement is everywhere around here. We haven't had anybody really arrive here in the last little bit. I believe I may have seen the district attorney arrive in an SUV maybe about 20 minutes ago. It certainly looked like him. If not, he is a twin running around the city of Milwaukee. But the status here is the same as it has been. It is eerie quiet. Law enforcement, though, is everywhere. But no change in the last, I'd say, 90 minutes to 2 hours that I've been out here on the scene, guys.
Shamraz live for us there on the scene as you see things picking up again. We are understanding that Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers is going to either make his way to Milwaukee. He was here in the area in Wauwatosa earlier in the day. Not sure if he made it back to Madison or not and is coming back, but will offer comments in a news conference a little bit later this evening. When we have a time for that location, we'll pass that on to you. But we do know that the governor has been updated, is aware of what is happening, and plans to make some comments a little bit later this evening.
We want to send it back out to Tom Durian, who has been on the scene outside Molson Coors. And Tom, what can you update us with at this hour?
Charles, you're looking at this picture that we've been showing you down the alley for the afternoon here. This is either plainclothes officers or some employees with officers that we've kind of seen gather in this area. I wanted to mention one of the things I just saw, and that was two chaplains from the Salvation Army showed up here on scene, and you can kind of see them there in the bottom of the screen. They're just walking down there. I had a chance to talk with them off camera real quick as they were walking by, and I asked if, what they planned on doing, and they said they were here to offer emotional and spiritual support to, the hundreds or thousands of employees that work in this area. Of course, the two of them won't be able to do that alone, but they're going down there to meet with other chaplains from the Salvation Army and presumably other groups as well, to meet with all these people. Of course, even if you're not near where this happened, you're on the campus, you know somebody that works here, this is going to reverberate throughout this city.
All right, Tom, I
weeks,
want to cut you short off because now Tom Barrett, our mayor of the city of Milwaukee, is speaking to reporters on what he's learned.
Scene. There are multiple fatalities. We know that. The police department, the fire department have been working extensively. The sheriff is here as well. Again, what has happened is there was a horrific shooting that has occurred. We're urging all residents and people in this area to stay away from this area. simply because of traffic diversions and things like that. But they are continuing their sweep to make sure that nothing more is occurring. But again, it is a horrible, horrible day for the employees here. It is a very rough day for anybody who is close to this situation. So we don't have any more details right now, but I just wanted to let you know what I know. Again, there are multiple people who have died, I believe including the shooter, and we'll have more information in the next several hours.
Mayor, what's your sense of this response and just the sense that what this means to the city today?
Well, again, you can see behind me the police and the fire departments are here. They're doing everything they can. This is a situation that is still very fluid. So I can't say anything more than that right now, other than please stay away from this area right now, and we'll have more information as we learn more information.
Any idea where this happened inside the facility on campus?
Again, they've pinpointed a building, but I don't want to even go into that right now as they continue. I don't know the answer to that either. Again, I don't want to give incorrect information. So what I know is there are multiple people who have died, and they are still doing a sweep to make sure that nothing else is going to be discovered. Okay?
Alderman Stamper, how do you feel about this happening in your district? It's typically quiet. Miller Valley is a pretty quiet place.
Sure. Well, I'm super sad, and it's a horrible situation, and I'm just here to see what I can do and lend a hand of support. And it's just sad. So, just looking for the outcome. And the mayor said it all. We're going to wait and be patient and see what comes out of this.
Do you know people who work for Molson Coors, and have they given you any type of, if you do, have they given you any type of sense of what
I know a lot of people that work at Miller Coors and Harley. It's too early to talk about what they said or what's going on. I don't want to disclose any of that type of information. Let's just be patient and see what happens, guys.
But how do you feel about it?
I'm sad. I'm hurt. This is not a good day right now. So I'm just gonna wait it out and get as much information as I can, and then I'll update you as much as I can once I have some more information.
Have you ever seen anything like this?
I haven't. This is the first since I have been elected that I can remember. Besides the Sikh temple was horrific too, but a mass shooting like this is unfortunate and very sad for our city. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Again, you are hearing from Alderman Stamper, and before that, Mayor Tom Barrett briefing reporters after they were briefed by law enforcement on the mass casualties at Molson Coors. Again, the mayor confirming for us that it is multiple deaths, including the shooter, but we are still waiting for law enforcement to give an update on that. However, I will say that the MPD's Twitter account is reporting that there is no active threat. However, this scene is active, and you can see that clearly by what we've been showing you over the last 2 hours with the just number of law enforcement agencies that are on hand, again, to assist Milwaukee Police Department along with the ATF, FBI, Milwaukee Fire Department, the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, and the security at Molson Coors Brewing Company. Again, we are waiting to get information from the police department on what transpired here at the campus earlier this afternoon that has resulted in the deaths of multiple employees at the Molson Coors Miller. We're trying to get it right, but Molson Coors Brewing Company this afternoon.
Well, let's address what we just saw here and what we got from the mayor and from Alderman Stamper. They weren't there to present official information. You could almost feel the mayor's reluctance to even approach the news cameras, but he wanted to get something out there.
He felt he had to say something. Understanding
that they were there, and we wanted to hear from someone official, but he's also isn't going to try to put misinformation out there. And doesn't want to step on the toes of Milwaukee Police Chief Alfonso Morales, who will be responsible for giving you the runs, hits, and errors, the particulars of exactly what's going on. So you felt the mayor wanting to say something. Go ahead and come out there, give some sort of official statement, confirm in fact that multiple people are dead, confirm that the shooter is dead, calling it a horrific shooting that has occurred and a horrible, horrible day. But beyond there, both Alderman Stamper and Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett wanted to pull back and not be in a position to try to answer particular questions about exactly what went down. Right.
And speaking to the sadness of this iconic place, Miller Brewing, as it was known to us for so many years, Molson Coors as it is now, a place of employment for so many generation of Milwaukeeans, and to have a mass shooting take place there in a story that will play throughout the country, and they will say, Miller Brewing, Molson Coors, that is a place that many people will say, yeah, I remember being there. Carol Meekins has been talking to employees, monitoring what the CEO of the company has been saying, and also keeping an eye on everything that's been coming into our newsroom. That's where you are right now. What do we now know, Carol?
Well, we do know that one of our employees has a teacher at Marquette University High School, and Marquette police are responding that there is no longer threat. People and students are allowed to leave. There's no threat to the campus, and there's no need for the buildings to go on lockdown. There's also word that you have mentioned earlier that Harley-Davidson is no longer under lockdown, but it is still an active scene, but there's no active threat, meaning, as we heard the mayor say, they are making a sweep of the entire place to make sure there's nothing else that they have not found, but right now there's no active threat to anyone. So it looks like in terms of that particular case, things are settling down, but again, we still have to find out we have to get a lot of answers to some of these questions as to how many people and what transpires. That we still do not know.
All right. Thank you, Carol Meekins. And as you mentioned earlier this afternoon, Charles, that a number of our state senators as well as our congressmen and women have responded to what has happened. We are now seeing that there's a tweet out by Nancy Pelosi who says, "We are closely following developments surrounding the shooting in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Our prayers are with the families who have lost loved ones and the first responders protecting the community. Congress has a duty to them all to take action to end gun violence." So the conversation, again, we will be in the conversation once again talking about gun violence, but as we wait to hear more of what transpired at Molson Coors Brewing Company this afternoon.
When you think about that, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, obviously the entire nation aware of this and will become increasingly aware, but as she and the Democrats prepare to make their way here to Milwaukee in July for the Democratic National Convention, Milwaukee was already on their radar, and this is an issue that Democrats bring up frequently after these types of things. They start talking about gun control, and so they no doubt, not to get political at this point, but no doubt are going to examine this and think about how it relates to their presence here in the city of Milwaukee, in the state of Wisconsin, when they move toward their convention, which comes in July.
And it all depends on what we learned from law enforcement on what transpired here at the brewery and how it plays into the gun conversation.
But what we have clearly learned, so sadly, is that no city, no community is immune to this type of violence, and it is unfolding right now in our community. And we're going to share some insight to how this was unfolding at the moment it was happening. It is sound from Rebroadcast, and we have not had a chance to listen to this as well. So we're going to listen with you on what was being said at the scene as this active shooting was taking place. Let's listen.
I can't get an address, but it's the first large complex just east of 41st on the south side of the street. Okay, Dave, they're doing CPR on a guy here. Okay, confirmed active shooter. Shooter's still at large. We got one man down.
And that is just some of the insight that we are getting on Rebroadcast, some of the radio traffic situation. And go ahead, Shannon.
We do have an update. Milwaukee police is putting this out on their Twitter account to help families of those who are impacted at Miller Coors. They're now saying that they have a family staging area for employees, and that will be at the Harley-Davidson parking lot at 35th and Juneau. So again, if you've been listening to us for the last few hours and are concerned about your loved one who may have been working in the brewery and want to connect with them, the family staging area for employees, we are now being told, is at the Harley-Davidson parking lot at 35th and Juneau.
I believe we had Ben Jordan at that location, so we'll have to check in with him soon to see what is happening. Was there any indication that people were just supposed to show up? Or is there any number that people are supposed to call?
They did not include a number, but we know in these types of situations, people are, you don't think it's fight or flight, right? So you just want to make sure your loved one is safe. And if you know that there's a point that we can meet, and if they're being told that once their employees are being evacuated from the situation, they're to go to this location, That's a great place for the two to meet, but no, it did not have a phone number. It rather just had a location. Again, the Harley-Davidson parking lot at 35th and Juneau. If you have a loved one who may have been working in the Molson Coors Brewing Company area at the time of this active shooting.
Thank you for that. Steve Peterson, if you're still on the line with us, talk to us about that communication with family members. Here, we're getting confirmation from the mayor of at least multiple fatalities. As law enforcement is doing their job in terms of still the active situation, even though no longer an active shooter, how are law enforcement communicating with families, and a lot of families who haven't been able to hear from someone who might have been in the headquarters or in one of the buildings? How does that conversation take place?
Yeah, and that's a real difficult part of the whole equation here, and one is myself as a 30-year law enforcement veteran was one of the more difficult ones as you start identifying victims and then starting the notification process. I would guess the medical examiner's office is actively involved with this, and they also assist with those notifications. But it's a difficult process, but obviously it's one that's going to try to be done as quickly as they can because with the amount of employees at a business complex like this, there are a lot of folks out there today that our hearts are just breaking for, and a lot of them have the unknown of not knowing if their loved ones are all right or not.
Unknown is just, I can only sense how anxious, nervous, worried, concerned anyone might be. And also, Steve, as you know, in this day and age, because all of us right here on the set are working with our phones, that ability to immediately reach out to someone, immediately call someone and hope that they will respond or answer on the other end. And for some folks, there is no response right now because we know there are multiple fatalities. And it just speaks to the tragedy that happens in these situations, the loss of life. You go to work one day and you're not coming home because something happened at work.
Absolutely. It's just beyond explanation. I'm lost at words when it comes to that component of it, and it's just sad.
It is sad, and we have had you here so many times when we talk about the loss of life with law enforcement, and here we are seeing the loss of life of people who worked at Molson Coors. We are waiting on a number of developments here as we head into the 5 o'clock hour. We know many of you are watching and waiting to learn more information about what happened at Molson Coors. We know there are multiple fatalities. We know the shooter is among those. We know that there is no longer an active or concerned situation about extended violence or more violence potentially taking place inside Molson Coors. But we also know there is a large gathering process going on right now. Law enforcement probably laser focused on who is the shooter, what was the motive, what triggered this type of response today by that active shooter, and then also getting to the families, talking to the families who have lost loved ones, and waiting also for company officials to arrive. We are hearing that the head of the company was in Houston, now on their way back. We're now hearing from local leaders with the mayor, our U.S. senators, Speaker Pelosi, and on here as all of this story unfolds, waiting to find out what is going on.
Can I ask, has it been since 2012 that we've really had a significant mass shooting, thinking of the Azana Spa shooting as well as the Sikh temple?
That would be...
This has been our first since then?
I will have to go back and look at the dates.
What is the timeline? But before that, I think the Sheraton Hotel in Brookfield, Charles, you were around for that one, was...
That was on St. Patrick's Day or near St. Patrick's Day for that one in Brookfield. We are now hearing...
Tragically, we're able to go over a number of these scenes, and sadly,
I was looking it up in
point.
2012. We had the Sikh temple shooting, and then we had the Azana Spa as well.
And then
and
prior
I think
to
Sheraton
that
was prior to that.
Carol Meekins is in the newsroom. I do want to, Carol, are you hearing that there's going to be a 6 o'clock news
Right.
briefing?
I just wanted to make sure that you were aware. Milwaukee Police just sent out the information that there will be a 6 p.m. news conference to give us more information about what transpired today. So that is in about, in about an hour, a little bit more than an hour. We should learn more about what happened. This coming from Milwaukee Police, a statement about what took place at 35th and State.
And Carol, can you, just because viewers are coming into this, where was the CEO at the time, and what sort of early information did we learn from that?
Well, Gavin Hattersley was in Houston, and there was a distributors conference, and really he was about to hold the last session and be a part of it, but at the end of that session we were told that he apparently got up, made a very emotional statement, and it was a very difficult time. He told them that he had to leave because he said the safety of the people was most important that he worked with. Obviously, just learning of this horrible situation that took place, he's on his way back to make sure that he finds out more information and deals and comforts his employees and everybody. This is a very sad time. And I think as we look at these pictures and we think about Milwaukee, for this to happen to a landmark that is so near and dear to all of our hearts, it's just a shame. And I think people are just sickened. And I feel sad. And I'm thinking of the families tonight that are going to find out bad news, and it breaks your heart. There's really very little you can say, but it's just tragic and sad.
Tragic and sad indeed, especially when you see that iconic sign, Miller, on top of the headquarters there. I mean, everyone in Milwaukee.
And the woman sitting over the moon.
Exactly. Right. I mean, it's just so much a part of the fabric of who we are in Milwaukee. And so I know all of our hearts go out to all of the folks who work there as we wait and learn for more details. Sean Gallagher has been talking to folks who have been showing up at a bar and responding to this tragedy.
Yeah, Charles, a lot of tears, a lot of smiles as well, as people are first starting to hear from some folks that they haven't heard from in hours. I actually heard somebody, they had one of those old Nextel chirps that they spoke with somebody. They said that he was okay, and they erupted in some cheers and some applause. Really a great moment to see that, but also a lot of people who are coming in, embracing, having a lot of tears. You can see all the people that are in here, they're all trying to wrap their heads around this. A couple of the people that I talked to off camera said there are a lot of employees here at the Molson Coors plant, but it's really like a family. Everybody kind of knows each other, so everybody's still waiting to hear to make sure everybody that they know is okay. I have seen Milwaukee Police did come into Spitfires on State. They are talking to a few people that may have witnessed something, heard something, as they do their due diligence along with this investigation. But everybody that's in here right now, they are just trying to figure out everything that happened and want to know and make sure that all their friends, family, whoever that they have inside there are all safe. But we'll throw it back to you guys for now.
We are talking with Sean Gallagher, who is updating us on the situation of folks who have been watching inside this bar, what you have been watching at home about this tragedy with multiple people dead at Molson Coors in Milwaukee. We have heard from the mayor. We have heard, and are, I should say, waiting to hear from Milwaukee's police chief. There is a lot of information that is unfolding at this time, and we are doing our due diligence to get to the bottom of it, including information about the shooter. There is a lot of things swirling out there about who the shooter is and what may have been the motive here, and we do want to nail down those details before we let you know and when we can confirm those details, Shannon.
Right, and again, we are just an hour away from police doing that just for us and for the public to, again, help us understand what transpired this afternoon at Molson Coors Brewing Company. And as we talk about the facts and the details, we also need to talk about the human side of this, the life that was lost, people who are now getting calls or who are going to that family meeting spot and are learning that their family member is not the one who's coming home tonight. So again, not to be frivolous with it, but to be thoughtful and intentional about those who are impacted by what has happened today. And hopefully we'll get some insight onto the why. But we also want to take a moment to realize that there are a lot of people who are impacted by what happened today that are more than just facts and numbers, but the fact that their loved one may not be coming home tonight.
Earlier we heard from Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett. It was really our first official any sort of information, someone who stepped in front of the camera and
Kinda
told us a few
confirming it
things.
for us.
Exactly, right. So for those of you who are just joining us in our live news coverage, let's replay some of the mayor's comments from just about a half hour ago.
What has happened is there was a horrific shooting that has occurred. We're urging all residents and people in this area to stay away from this area simply because of traffic diversions and things like that. But they are continuing their sweep to make sure that nothing more is occurring. But again, it is a horrible, horrible day for the employees here. It is a very rough day for anybody who is close to this situation.
And that was Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett just a few minutes ago. He arrived on the scene shortly, I would say about an hour after all of this unfolded. And he has been the mayor of this city for 4 terms and has seen gun violence in our city, often shows up at the scene of shootings and homicides, and this time showing up at a mass shooting at one of the most iconic places in Milwaukee and in Wisconsin. This place known as Molson Coors, but as so many of us who have lived in the area, grew up in the area, know it as Miller.
And he's so proud and excited to share Milwaukee with what is expected to be the world stage, certainly a national stage, if not a world stage, with the Democratic National Convention comes here in less than 6 months now. So you can certainly feel the stress of the mayor and other city officials who know that this is going to be part of that narrative then for that week when Milwaukee gets to shine in the spotlight.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we do hear from some of the Democratic presidential candidates about this shooting as more around the country learn about what has happened. We have added a helicopter to some of our live coverage here. You may have noticed our partners at WMAQ down in Chicago have brought in their helicopter to this location as this story now gains more national attention, knowing that a mass shooting has taken place at an iconic brewery in Milwaukee. We want to go back to, is it Sean Gallagher that has been standing by? There is, or Tom Durian, I know also has been focusing on what is happening. Does seem now, Tom, a lot more activity there outside the Molson Coors headquarters.
Yeah, Charles, this is, I'm just trying to get a shot right here. You can see the tactical officers, sorry about that bounce on the camera, tactical officers coming up this driveway right here. Just about, I'd say 4 minutes ago, we saw 3 Milwaukee police officers in their regular uniforms go in this side door, which is the headquarters for Molson Coors here. They went in the side door, they knocked on it, waited a couple seconds, then went in. As we've mentioned, they are going to need, and the mayor mentioned as well, to sweep the buildings around here to make sure that everything is okay before they start letting people go home. But as you see this live picture, you can see them coming up this driveway, and they will cross this hill in just a second. You'll be able to see a little bit more of them as they continue to walk up in the other buildings that are not near where it appears the shooting took place. I've lost sight of them right now, but it seems that they have gone in one of the other buildings down here off of State Street. These are probably some of the officers and tactical officers that we saw going down towards the west end of State Street earlier this afternoon when this was still a very active scene, and now we have seen slowly them start to come back, but they are starting to crest this hill right now. You see one of the officers there, and there are several behind him. This is also an area where a lot of the employee vehicles are parked. There's a parking garage right to the right of us that is full of vehicles. Occasionally we've seen a few people here come and get their cars out of this parking garage. But here we go with the scene here as they come up here, and it's unclear exactly what they'll be doing. But they have been going building to building from what we've seen and making sure that the scene is clear. Again, these guys are heavily armed tactical officers that have been going through the buildings here at Molson Coors. This is the parking garage that they're approaching right now. We mentioned that there are some employees that have been here, but you know, we don't know much about the shooter in this situation, and we don't know if that person was an employee here. Do they have a vehicle here? They need to check all that out. They're going to check everything out to make sure it's safe, but this is definitely the largest force of officers we've seen come our direction here off of Highland right now, and they are entering this parking garage. I'm going to listen a little bit to see if I can hear what they're talking about or what they're doing. Just getting instructions of where to go through this garage right now. All right. And there's been some security officers in the office here at this garage throughout the afternoon. Sure.
All right. So as you have observed that location, I do want to bring in Steve Peterson, the former detective from Waukesha County. And Steve, I wanted to sort of help you or get us to understand what's going on here. Is this more of the security sweep that's in place?
Yeah, exactly. Looking at this, it would suggest to me that the majority of the buildings have been cleared, and now they're going to come in and they're going to sweep that parking structure, which is probably full of a whole bunch of vehicles, and they're going to do a methodical sweep to make sure that the parking structure is secure. So once all these components get done, they get that parking structure secure. If they feel really reasonably secure that, all the other buildings and the ancillary auxiliary buildings are secure, you'll probably start to see a release of those employees that have been holding in place while this has been going on.
Steve Peterson, we really appreciate you help us walk through what is happening. Tom Durian also providing so much clarity on what is happening at that location. And so
I just wanted to interject.
Hey, Charles, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Go ahead, Tom.
Oh, just wanted to let you know, so they're going through the garage. Our photographer Gideon was able to shoot in there, and they are looking individually at car to car. Now, you have this gentleman walking here. I presume he's one of the employees. We've seen this before, where they come around the backside. They made the long trek around to come get their vehicle. He just happens to be walking at a time where he doesn't know that there are dozens of officers inside there right now. But we have seen them go car to car inside the garage there. They're obviously out of our field of view right at the moment. But this is a 3-level parking garage, and I can see vehicles on the top. It has been full all afternoon long. And again, there have been some people coming here to get their vehicles throughout the day. Here's this gentleman's going to interact with the officers here, probably not knowing what he's about to walk into there. But you can see, we know that the scene is starting to get a little tighter and be more controlled. This would have not happened earlier. Nobody would have been able to walk through here. They had this area pretty well cordoned off. But there again, they also took about 2 canine officers in there to take a look at the vehicles as well.
Tom, thank you for that update. Again, as you see, they are expanding the investigation, not only from the building where this may have transpired, but now into that parking lot. And as you said, sweeping through every vehicle. But we've also learned that this investigation goes way past State Street and 35th. It actually is where we find our other reporter, Kristen Byrne, who is standing by to give us some new information where you're seeing some activity.
Yes, Shannon, I'm in a neighborhood on the northwest side. We don't want to say the neighborhood at this point because what we have learned is that the information we're getting is that what happened in this neighborhood here, the police activity here on the northwest side, we're led to believe this is connected to what is happening or what has happened at Molson Coors earlier this afternoon. So again, not to jeopardize the police investigation in any way whatsoever, we're not naming where we're at because we don't know in which way this is connected. I can tell you from what we're seeing is that police have been in and out of a home on the northwest side. We have a mobile command unit that's been here. Dozens of police officers have been going in and out of a home. You can see the police tape wrapped up here. Some neighbors, of course, asking us what's going on. This is all developing here, and it has been for some time. But again, police are still have not released the name of the suspect in connection to Molson Coors as of yet. A lot of information still isn't out there, so we're piecing it together as they're piecing it together. We want to give people the most accurate information, but we are led to believe what's happening here in this northwest neighborhood in Milwaukee is somehow connected to the Molson Coors shooting that happened earlier this afternoon. I'll send it back to you guys.
That's our Kristen Byrne live on the northwest side. Kristen, thank you. We're getting aerial pictures in now from our partners at NBC News out of Chicago. They have brought their helicopter up now, and we're getting aerial views of the scene. Just to piggyback off of what Kristen was reporting, a number of us here with sourced information close to or within MPD, now getting information, in fact, that neighborhood where Kristen is on the northwest side is, as she said, connected to this. Beyond that, TMJ4 News is not going further to identify what exactly that connection is, though we're hearing things that's not confirmed, but enough confirmation that the location there and folks in that neighborhood are going to want to know what's with this police response here. What is with all the squads? Why are things taped off when certainly they know nothing particularly went down there, nothing happened there. So that's the explanation for that it is connected to the situation here at Molson Coors, that based on multiple reports from sources.
And having covered some of these high crime situations and where you have multiple fatalities, it is not uncommon to see the footprint of what actually happened begin to expand beyond where the actual shooting took place. And so I think this is evidence that they are looking at something else and are trying to see if there is a connection to this. And I think the mayor spoke to that in general terms, saying this is still an active situation. It is no longer an active shooter situation, but clearly law enforcement is in place to look at the long look here of what still needs to be uncovered about what happened today. That's why we saw very early on the command post arriving on the scene, and that indicated to me the first clue we were in for a long night, because that's where they can get all of those communications going together in one central location to understand what happened inside Molson Coors.
Well, the logistics too, Shannon. We were talking about how many employees at this facility. More than 1,000 may have been on site today, and they have to make sure that they've at least connected with every person who was there. Did you see something? Did you hear something? Because as you indicated, Charles, sure, the shooter situation is done. The investigation is way on the front end of something that's going to take a long time.
Not only that, but when you look at the viewpoint on site here and from above, you can tell that it is all hands on deck with the number of police vehicles that you see on scene. Just moments ago from that WMAQ shot that we saw from the air, we saw more than 12, I saw more than 12 cars, police cars, marked and unmarked, just right on State Street. And then as we were at 35th and State Street, you could see even more from the fire department. Let's send it out to Lauren Linder, who has been on the scene, talking to people around as well as talking with the mayor about what transpired early this afternoon.
And apparently we just lost Lauren, so we're going to have to wait on that. But we do have multiple crews out. And Shannon, I want to go back to something that you were reporting on, which is families are being asked to go to the Harley-Davidson parking lot. And because
35th and Juneau,
we want to continue to remind people as they're watching here, there is no number that we have been given for those folks. Ben Jordan is now going to be able to join us. And Ben, I thought you were near that location at the parking lot of Harley-Davidson. What have you been able to learn?
That's right, Charles. We are at the Harley-Davidson parking lot here at 35th and Juneau. This is where Harley-Davidson is offering their parking lot for friends and families of Molson Coors employees to come here and reunite. You can also see right behind me there are two Milwaukee County Transit System buses. They won't be transporting anyone. They are just here to serve as a warming area, as a lot of these employees are still unable to get to their vehicles as they are inside this perimeter that police have set up for this investigation. But right now, we haven't seen too many employees come to this location quite yet, just some Harley-Davidson employees leaving work. But we are told this is where family and friends of Molson Coors employees will be meeting to reunite with their families. Charles?
There, Ben Jordan. Thanks, Ben. Just wanted to pass this along, too, as we're getting more communications from officials, politicians, people connected to this. This is from Attorney General Josh Kaul for the state of Wisconsin. This is the statement being attributed to him that was just released. This is gut-wrenching. My heart goes out to Molson Coors employees, their families, and the entire Milwaukee community. The DOJ Division of Criminal Investigation is on the scene and will continue assisting local law enforcement with whatever they need. So you got the Department of Justice on scene there as well.
And, you know, we talk about the help now that's coming in, the response that the Milwaukee County Transit providing buses for warming stations. Throughout this newscast, we have seen a number of chaplains from the Salvation Army out to help those who are impacted. Again, we don't know how this impacts not only the employees, but the residents who live around this campus, who must, again, be frightened at one point in time, knowing that there was an active shooter on scene.
And those chaplains do so much work in our community, and it's not like they just show up on the bad days. They're there every day.
They have full-time jobs, Charles.
Exactly.
They get called in,
Right.
and when they can go, they go.
They are part of our community, members of our community, and so on a day like today, this is where they come in and can provide so much love, comfort to those who are grieving right now as we wait to see and wait to hear from the police chief. I will also tell you that having just been with the medical examiner's office last night, spending some time with them as they are dealing with a high volume of drug overdose deaths and just the sheer work that they have been doing in the last year or two or three. And all of them, the two that I spoke to that there is no disconnect when they go to a home where someone has died. It is something that touches them every time that they have to deal with this. And imagine now they're dealing with multiple fatalities, and that they will have to go to the scene and be a part of the process of identifying and also then connecting the families to this horrible, horrible tragedy and sort of helping them, providing comfort to them on a situation like this. And I was only touched by how skillful they are, and just that they look at this work as not a job, but an opportunity to help families who are dealing with tragedies.
Well, you mentioned the chaplains as well, Charles. You know, the long game for them is not only to minister here to the folks on scene, but also to the officers, to the first responders. When you look at MPD just in and of itself, not to say that all of the responders were not touched, but this is a department that is not that far removed from having lost 3 men in less than a year, and the tragedy that they've dealt with within their own ranks and the grief that so many of them have felt, and they've been dealing with that. So these ministers aren't just there today, but they're sort of in it for the long game to keep an eye on people. Who needs help? Who needs a little boost? Who is going to need that counseling and that ministry as they go on and continue in their work?
And you know, and that's such a valid point, Vinny, because again, we think of the first responders who go into the action, but we also have to think about those who help them after they've seen what they've seen, heard what they've heard, and to be that comfort, to be that space of solace to help them get through the next phase for the next unfortunate situation.
And today's an adrenaline day, so you get through today. What about tomorrow? What about next week? What about when those images and the things that you saw or perhaps had to be a part of start coming back around in a moment of calm?
And we heard so vividly through Broadcastify, and if we're able to play some of those to remind people of just what law enforcement was rolling up to on that situation. And you could tell that there was some energy in their voice in terms of the sense of urgency about an active shooting situation, and how all of that was unfolding as they are arriving on the scene, and as more and more law enforcement then follow behind them. And as we have seen from the excellent reporting from Tom Durian about the large number of law enforcement on the scene that are now skillfully going through all of the locations to make sure there are no other surprises. How did the active shooter get there? What is there a car now left behind somewhere that they now want to make sure?
And was there any more ammunition left in that vehicle? Or, like you said, we saw earlier the bomb squad was on scene, but not necessarily because a bomb was thought to be on the campus, but nonetheless for safety and assurance. So again, as this has all unfolded, some of the clues that we've been able to get as we await for the police is scanner traffic. And that is conversations between the dispatch sending out to police to get them to these critical scenes. So let's hear one of those scanner traffic reports that came in shortly after shots were fired.
Response 3939 West Highland Boulevard. Active shooter. What report of one person shot at Miller Coors. 3939 West Highland Boulevard. 3939 West Highland Boulevard. 3939 West Highland Boulevard. Miller Coors for active shooter. One person shot. A copy. Is the scene safe? It's currently not confirmed as a safe scene.
And again, that was just moments after the first shots were fired. We do know, after speaking with Mayor Tom Barrett, it is multiple victims involved in this incident today on the campus of Miller Coors Brewing Company. And we are awaiting, just about 15 minutes away from a news conference with Chief Morales, along with the other top law enforcement agencies who are here investigating this crime.
And those calls were about, just want to confirm, we talk about a basic timeline. Our information is that those first calls that we just played were about 11 minutes after 2 this afternoon. First time that is showing up on the record. So thought it was in the neighborhood of about 20 after, Charles, when we first started hearing about it.
And I was just going to say, here we are 3 hours into this gut-wrenching afternoon for not only the employees here at Molson Coors, but for the city of Milwaukee and the state of Wisconsin, as we have now seen again unfold in real time in our backyard, in where we call home, another mass shooting. And there's going to be a lot of conversations going on about why and how, as we wait to learn what exactly happened, what triggered this particular situation. And Vince, as you know, we are waiting to hear from the police chief. We also hearing that Governor Evers is going to be having a news conference. Lots of people are weighing in, but what we still don't know is why.
I think we ought to get this in as well. We heard from the mayor. Of course, this is an election year. The mayor is running for re-election. His challenger, State Senator Lena Taylor, is out with a statement, so I want to provide that for you as well. It reads, in part, I am profoundly saddened to learn about the number of lives lost today at a Molson Coors facility. While we wait to understand the motive behind this tragedy, many of us are again shaking our heads in disbelief. We are forced to question if this was preventable. Were there warning signs? For now, however, we will humbly mourn the loss of life, support our neighbors and their families, and work to get through this difficult time. That from State Senator Lena Taylor, also a candidate for mayor of Milwaukee.
Let's send it out to Steve Shamraz, who's also been on scene for the last few hours nearby the headquarters of Molson Coors Brewing Company. Steve?
Yeah, we are parked at 37th and Highland, which is right between Molson Coors and Harley-Davidson. Harley appears to be trying to get back to business as usual. There's been a steady stream of traffic leaving the parking lot over the last, say, 40 minutes or so, as they're finally off of their lockdown, letting people go home. On the other side of the street, on the south side of Highland, the parking lots are mostly full. You do see a couple of cars trickling out every once in a while. Only in the last 5 minutes have we seen any vehicles leaving. Also going into that parking lot was a caravan of vehicles from the Wisconsin Department of Justice State Crime Lab. The timing of that was just at the same time that we got the statement emailed from Attorney General Josh Call saying that the state DOJ would do whatever it could and that they were on scene. They arrived scene just as that email hit our mailboxes. They are now inside the facility joining the investigation. Just a massive amount of law enforcement out here today. I heard our friend Steve Peterson talking about how it could have been a shift change at the tactical headquarters, only 10 blocks away from here, and that would partially explain it. This is just one of the largest responses of law enforcement I have ever seen as a reporter in the last 10 years. You have the FBI out here, the Sheriff's Department is out here, bomb squads are out here, federal law enforcement is out here, and now the state DOJ is joining this effort. Other than that, it is fairly quiet here at 37th and Highland. The scene that everybody's working at is a couple blocks south of where we are here in another building on the very large Molson Coors. It's going to take a while, and I know we've been trying to adjust today to that. But on the Molson Coors campus, this is another part of the facility a couple blocks away from where we are, which explains why it's been pretty status quo here. Just comings and goings, mostly at Harley-Davidson as they're letting their people go for the day, and just a slight trickle of vehicles from the brewery's parking facilities here at 37th and Highland. Guys?
Our Steve Shamraz there on scene. Shannon Sims, Charles Benson. I'm Vince Vitrano in the TMJ4 news desk here this afternoon, updating you on this tragic situation at Molson Coors. As Steve just mentioned, we know multiple people were killed, among them the shooter, in a mass shooting situation at Molson Coors that happened about 10 minutes after 2 o'clock this afternoon. Our Sean Gallagher has been covering reaction to this at a bar right there in the neighborhood where they've tipped back a few Miller beers in the day. And Sean, I know people are deeply affected there as they are neighbors with the brewery.
Yeah, here at Spitfire on State, a lot of the Miller employees come here after work, have a beer, maybe have some wings, just try to enjoy themselves. But today, a much different vibe. And I've tried to talk to a lot of these Miller employees, and they tell me that they actually aren't allowed to talk to the media. That's been something that's that they've been told. But we're talking now with the owners, Andy and Tammy. You guys have talked to a number of them. What are they sharing with you about this event?
Just that it was pretty chaotic, but everything kind of seemed to work out okay. People got out, people were evacuated, a lot of things happened right, and they also said that it's a big place. It's going to take some time for them to make sure everything's cleared. So
I've seen a lot of tears flowing. I mean, are you hearing from people that they still haven't heard from, people that they're friends with, loved ones?
Well, most of them don't know who it was. Some people didn't work in the same area, but they run past a lot of people, and quite honestly, what it comes down to is they just want to make sure that everyone else is safe. You know, their friends and family need to know that they're okay as well.
Yeah. And Tammy, I know I saw there's a lot of food that's out there too. You said that there have been a lot of just random donations coming in. What does that mean to you?
It's amazing. I mean, my heart is pouring out to all of these people that are giving us donations. We've had Missouri, we're getting Facebook, we're getting, what are the other ones?
Just phone calls and a lot of people doing it. Our concern is to make sure whatever they're donating is going to eventually go somewhere towards the families that have passed away. These guys here, we're going to take care of. We're going to make sure they're okay. That's what matters for most for us.
Yeah, because it really is like a family here. These guys know a lot of the employees that come through. They were telling me that the employees that were showing up after this first happened, they said that they were arriving with no wallets, no keys, nothing. That's why they decided to feed them and take care of them, and these other people just opening their wallets to help. But we'll talk to a few more people as they are grieving with this process. There are Milwaukee police detectives here trying to talk to folks who did experience anything as they just try to unravel everything that happened today, guys.
Well, certainly, Sean, appreciate that update. Again, you can appreciate that people want to be there amongst friends and a friendly place to be, friendly faces where they can decompress, go over what they have seen or heard, and just be concerned about their neighbors.
So often we hear how your family becomes your workplace because you spend so many time or so many hours there, so many years there, and that would guess Miller Coors, Molson Coors, who's been a fixture in this community. We are talking about generation after generation of folks who have at some point in their life worked down there. And so I do hope that we can, as you see here, we're waiting. This is a live picture for what will be a news conference from the Milwaukee Police Chief, and hoping to get more details about exactly what unfolded here. I do see an unmarked car there arriving. I do know the governor is also planning to hold a news conference, and he may be joining the police chief, waiting to see if they will be together. Other people in law enforcement weighing in from around the state on this topic, as well as lawmakers. And so we want to continue to monitor this situation, provide you the best information as we get it and as we can confirm it. Yes, we do know multiple fatalities. We do not have a specific number just yet. We do know that the shooter is dead, but we do not have a specific name or identity yet that we're ready to report on in terms of who that shooter is and why this unfolded today. We do want to talk to Kristen Byrne, who has been monitoring developments on the investigation. And Kristen, what can you tell us?
Well, Charles, I can tell you that what's happening, the police activity that is happening in the neighborhood that I'm in on the northwest side of the city of Milwaukee, we're led to believe is connected to the earlier shooting from this afternoon at Molson Coors. So behind me, you see several police vehicles that are here, the flashing lights, a portion of this northwest neighborhood here in the city being blocked off. We have watched police officers go in and out of one home in particular. We don't want to say the address because we don't know what connection, if any connection to that, but we're led to believe from the information that we are being told is that there is a connection. So again, we just don't know what that connection may be. But the police activity here, from what I can tell you from being here for some time, several different police vehicles, SUVs, squad cars. At one point, there was a mobile command unit that was on the scene that has left. They also had the animal control unit, and we did see some police officers dealing with a dog that was inside the home. They removed that dog from the scene, but we're just kind of watching neighbors, come home asking us what's going on. We're just trying to piece it all together here as well. But we've been here for some time, since about 3:15 this afternoon, and we don't want to report anything that we don't know for sure is a fact, because this is all breaking news and coming in. Like you said, we haven't named the shooter yet. That shooter has not been identified as of yet, but we're led to believe the police activity, and there's a lot of police activity in this neighborhood, is connected to this massive shooting at Molson Coors. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Kristen Byrne, live in a Northwest neighborhood where it is believed that it is in connection with the shooting that happened at Molson Coors campus earlier this afternoon. Again, you are seeing images outside of the campus with a investigation area that goes pretty wide, from State, Highland, from 35th all the way to 47th, I believe. And again, a number of employees have been told, if you want to meet your loved ones and you're still on campus, to go to Juneau and 35th, which is the Harley-Davidson parking lot.
We want to let you know that there's a lot of new information that is going to be rapidly coming in the next 30 minutes, including in the next few minutes. We are going to dip away from our wall-to-wall coverage, live coverage of this mass shooting at Molson Coors, because the President of the United States was expected to speak at 5:30 today to talk about the coronavirus. So we do want to begin, when he starts to speak, to take the beginning of his comments from the White House when he makes those. So as we continue to monitor all the things that are happening, at some point we're going to shift away and hear what the president has to say about the coronavirus, and potentially waiting to see if he has been briefed or updated on this situation in Milwaukee. At 6 o'clock, we also know that the police chief will give us his first comments about what happened and the investigation going forward. We also know that Governor Evers, who was in town earlier today and is going to be updating us and giving us a news conference as well. He has been a big proponent of more gun control, and at this point we don't know how all of that will play into the debate and the dialogue that often happens after these types of mass shootings. So I want to let you know, as you're standing by here waiting for new information, we are as well, waiting to learn more about who are these people that were killed, who is the shooter, and why did all of this happen today at Molson Coors.
So that, as we come up here on 5:30, and as Charles indicated, the official news conference here locally set for 6 o'clock or thereabouts. These things are fluid. It's kind of when we get everybody together. We don't know who is expected to speak, but among those you would expect to hear from the Chief of Police, Alfonso Morales, for Milwaukee Police Department. The other thing that we started to talk about, you talk about the President of the United States making some sort of statement on this. We already heard from the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, making statements about this. If you looked at that bank of microphones that was being set up, you could see a number of unfamiliar logos there. Those are crews coming up from Chicago to cover this and to cover this for the networks, as this is national, if not international news at this point. Milwaukee in the spotlight for terrible reasons, once again, just months away from again being in that position when the Democrats have their convention here in July.
Let's send it to Carol Meekins, who's in the newsroom with some updated information.
Well, we've been hearing from people from all over, including our local leaders, and we did get a tweet from Milwaukee County Executive Chris Abele. The hearts of every Wisconsinite are heavy as we mourn those who lost their lives today in Milwaukee. These are the men and women who came to work every day, proud to work for a company like Molson Coors, with very little fanfare. I ask everyone to keep these men and women, their family, friends, everyone at Molson Coors in their thoughts and prayers during a very difficult time. So it's a time to mourn in Milwaukee from not just the people at Molson Coors, but for all of us here collectively.
All right, Carol, we will continue to reach back to you as you talk to more and more people on this tragic situation in the place we call home, Milwaukee, and a place that has been so iconic to who we are and the fabric of Milwaukee. We have a baseball team named the Milwaukee Brewers. Brewing is part of our DNA, and now we are seeing this tragic event happen at a place so many of us know about. And as we do, we continue to wait to see for these new developments and new information, because we know and can promise that in the next few minutes there will be new information coming forward, because we're going to hear from the police chief for the very first time. And now, almost 3 hours into this, they have been spending a lot of time talking about and talking with other people who may help put some of the pieces together on this tragic day and as it unfolded in real time.
And what we'll find out is that it didn't start when the shots were fired. It started way before then. And hopefully we'll get some of those details, some perspective on what may have happened prior to this shooting happening in a workplace environment. And again, you're looking at video from earlier today when you saw this rush of emergency vehicles on hand trying to get to those who were impacted by this shooting early this afternoon. And Charles, we're 3 hours in and we still don't know a lot of the who, what, the when, and the where of where all this happened. But you can see from the video, we're looking at that all hands were on deck and that all of the tactical units were there to try to assist in helping find not only the shooter, but making sure that the situation was under control.
What's happening still at the Molson Coors campus, pardon me. Authorities are there. You saw a number of them going through the parking lot. I'm told by a source that among other things, they are looking for the shooter's vehicle that they thought could possibly be parked in that parking structure that we saw earlier. Again, this is video from earlier in the day, closer to when that shooting happened, when they were at that point not convinced perhaps that the situation was under control, that perhaps the shooter was still out there, as you saw more and more people in that tactical gear rushing toward the scene as opposed to coming out.
And as we know, it's a very large campus, so there's a lot of places to check and double check. And as we have mentioned, how did the shooter get to the campus? What was left behind? And as Tom Durian, in the key place that he has been located just outside the headquarters there and right next to that parking structure, we saw a dozen to 2 dozen members of law enforcement in full gear go through that parking lot car by car to see if anything else could be discovered or if anything else was left behind, because as we are hearing from Ben Jordan, there are buses waiting, there are people that want to get out of there, who want to get back home to loved ones, and they're saying, but my car is in the parking structure, and no one in law enforcement is going to let somebody go get a car unless they first check that parking structure. So this is part of the due diligence, it's part of the process of this, and it's the meticulous work that needs to be done to make sure those who are safe stay safe.
And it requires some patience, too.
Right. How badly do you want to get home today? If you're someone there who's affected by this, you know, your husband, your wife, your kids, your mom, your dad, somebody's waiting for you, and you're waiting for that hug to let them know that you're okay, and then just for you to begin to decompress after this situation.
And what we're seeing right now, if we can zoom in, if you can let the photographer know that we're live on TV with them right now, you can see a number of employees now leaving the headquarters of Molson Coors Brewing Company there on Highland Avenue. Again, this, as you mentioned, you want to get home to your loved ones to let them know I'm okay. But at the same time, the patience that needs to be in that building, in that space right now as law enforcement works to unravel what happened this afternoon. But again, you're taking a live look at a number of employees leaving Molson Coors Brewing headquarters here in Milwaukee on Highland Avenue.
We're waiting for the President of the United States, who had a previously scheduled news conference for this evening. President Trump was expected to speak about coronavirus, but we anticipate that he will mention this situation here in Milwaukee off the top of his remarks tonight. So as we expect and anticipate that, we are waiting for that, monitoring a feed from the White House. We could hear from President Trump at any moment. As soon as the president takes the podium, just want to let you know at home, we are going to cut over to that and hear from the president as he speaks to this particular situation.
But I can't help but think this live picture that we're now seeing, that these employees leaving after what will have been the worst day of their lives, working for a company that has been so important to the city of Milwaukee, and what their thoughts are as they're leaving, and knowing that there are going to be others who aren't going home tonight. We are waiting to get a specific number on the number of fatalities. The best information we have from the mayor is that there are multiple. I do want to let you know the President of the United States is now getting ready to speak. We are going to listen to him.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you. Before I begin, I'd like to extend my deepest condolences to the victims and families in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Earlier today, a wicked murderer opened fire at a Molson Coors Brewing Company plant, taking the lives of 5 people. A number of people were wounded, some badly wounded. Our hearts break for them and their loved ones. We send our condolences. We'll be with them. And it's a terrible thing, terrible thing. So our hearts go out to the people of Wisconsin and to the families. Thank you very much. I've just received another briefing from a great group of
And again, you're hearing from our President Donald Trump, speaking and giving his regards and condolences for the loved ones who have lost lives in today's mass shooting. Again, this has made national attention now, and we are waiting to get a press conference from our chief of police to give us an update on how many casualties were impacted by this workplace shooting, and hopefully the name of the shooter and the why this happened this afternoon.
And a couple thoughts more about the president as well. We do want you to know we are going to monitor what he is saying about the coronavirus, which has been a big national and international story. And so we are not going to forget about that. We are going to keep an eye on what he has to say, and we'll report on the new information that he is providing. But Vince and Shannon, he did tell us something that we are now hearing for the first time, and that is 5 people were killed, and that is the information. It is not uncommon for the President of the United States to be briefed on these types of mass shootings, so this is the first sort of confirmation number we are getting from an official. And the other indication he said that there were people badly wounded. We have not heard that at this point, so that is something we will continue to check on. Tom Durian, you have been at Molson Coors throughout the afternoon. We are watching people leave that headquarters. Have you been able to talk to anybody? And do we know if the parking structure that you are nearby, has that now been cleared for people to go home?
Yeah, Charles, these are the employees that are coming out of the east side of the Molson Coors headquarters building, and many of them are filing down the sidewalk here. We have not been able to talk to them out of some respect for what they've gone through today, and the police are keeping us at a little bit of a distance, understandably. But they are going into that parking garage where the last time we talked to you, you saw heavily armed tactical officers going vehicle to vehicle, looking through that parking garage, which is a sizable garage. You know, I'd say at least 1,000 cars can fit in there. So that is where these folks are going into to get their vehicles and head home for the day. Obviously, also traffic has picked up here on Highland. The vehicles, and I'll ask Gideon to swing back around to the other side here, the vehicles are coming out of the parking lot of the headquarters, and that is the only traffic that is allowed on this road right now on Highland. And so now you're looking back east on Highland, and you can see one after another the vehicles are traveling either out of that parking lot, or the folks that are heading the direction where you're seeing the officer direct them, those are the people coming out of the parking garage, because this is blocked on either end. So the only traffic that is going through here right now are the employees. We saw the employees walking together, many of them talking. You know, we could overhear a little bit about what they're talking about. Of course, this has been a traumatic day for them and their colleagues here at Molson Coors. But again, employees are starting to go home here from the headquarters buildings at Molson Coors here on Highland. And we'll continue to monitor this, and we'll send it back to you right now.
All right. Thank you, Tom Durian. We appreciate your live updates from the scene. I now want to switch to Sean Gallagher, who has been at a local bar just a couple of blocks away from where all this transpired. And he is now talking with, I believe, an employee who was maybe in the building prior to or got out before this all happened.
Can I have
Yeah, Shannon, she's a number of employees that have been here all day at the Spitfire bar, just trying to grieve with everything that happens. I have Selena, who you were saying you just walked into work as all of this unfolded. I mean, how are you feeling right now?
Sad, really sad.
What's going through your mind?
Just wondering who, why this all happened.
We've seen a number of these scenes before, all over the country. Do you ever think that it would be at the place you work?
Never. Yeah, it's unbelievable, actually.
You were telling me, I mean, you've been in communication with some people, I'm assuming via text message. What have you heard from people?
Actually, people were telling me what they've been hearing. We didn't really know anything right away.
How hard is it to not know?
That's the worst. because I'm sure everyone knows someone that got hurt.
You can tell emotions are starting to get to you. How do you move on?
You just have to. Just have to.
Selena was telling me a lot of employees there, but you guys feel like family. I mean, how tight is everybody that you
We're
work?
here 12 hours plus, so it's like a family. It's our second family, for sure.
What's this grieving process been like for you so far?
It's actually just starting to hit now. It didn't seem real at first, but as the days go by, I'm sure it'll get worse.
Selena, I appreciate you taking some time and talking with us. Prayers go to you. Hopefully everything turns out well for you. But a lot of employees are here just trying to figure all of this out. A number of people have been donating money as well just to help feed these people, because a lot of people just came here with nothing. They had to get out of the building. Didn't have their wallets, didn't have their purses, didn't have their keys, nothing at all. But this is their sanctuary right now as they try to grieve what happened today, guys.
That's our Sean Gallagher talking with an employee who, I believe she said she just arrived when this all started, and you could see the emotion that she was willing to share with us. And yeah, we'll pass along to our viewers as well. Sean's in a safe place where have the opportunity to talk with people who come in there in the event that they want to share their feelings and experiences with us in this tough times. Some people find that cathartic and want to share that. Others don't want to. We're going to be respectful of the people who work at Miller Coors and who are part of our community. So for those who want to come and share their thoughts and emotions with us and with our viewers, we'll be there for them. For those who don't, we're not there to harass and bother people in a difficult time. So I know we can trust Sean to be sensitive about that.
And we are going to send that out to Ben Jordan, who is at that spot near Harley-Davidson headquarters, where families are now being reunified with their families.
Charles, yeah, we're live here at 35th and Juneau at a Harley-Davidson parking lot. Harley-Davidson offering this as a meeting space for friends and families of Molson Coors to reunite with those employees. As Tom Durian just reported, those employees are now leaving Molson Coors, perhaps on their way over here. There are 2 MCTS buses at this parking lot. They're here simply to offer a warming place for people who may be waiting for their families or not able to perhaps get to their cars right now inside the investigative perimeter. I did see several people who are wearing coats that said District Attorney Critical Incident Team, so that perhaps they are here to talk with those who maybe witnessed something tragic and dealing with something terrible right now. Charles?
All right, Ben Jordan at the Harley-Davidson headquarters, where employees are now able to be reunited with their families on what has been an emotional day and the worst day for any employee who has worked at Molson Coors. So much loss of life. We're waiting to hear the exact number. We do know multiple people have died. And when this news conference begins, and we're about 15 minutes away from that, Chief Morales has been in these situations where he's had to tell the community about a tragic situation that has happened in his city, in our city as well. And so he will walk us through what he knows and what he can tell us about the shooter and what happened that day, or this day. Lauren Linder has been at that location, and I imagine we're getting ready close to this time. Nothing ever starts exactly on time, but the expectation is 6 o'clock, Lauren?
That's right, Charles. All the media is standing by right here. We have all the local media as well as media from networks from Chicago. We're all here waiting for Chief Morales to come and give us an update on what exactly went down at the Molson Coors campus just a few blocks away. And to give you an idea again of where we are, we're at 35th and State. I have been here for probably about 3 hours or so now since this all just broke this afternoon. Still multiple agencies on scene, still several big vehicles from command vehicles from the police department, from the sheriff's office, from the fire department. They're all here responding to this incident, and we're all just trying to learn more now, wait to hear from the police chief to learn more on what exactly happened this afternoon, what we know about the suspect, what we know about potentially how many victims there are, where this all actually happened, and what may have been the motive behind all of this. So we're hoping to get those all this confirmation on obviously a place that is Milwaukee is recognized by. People know when you come to Milwaukee, people know Miller. When you come to Milwaukee, people know now Molson Coors, and obviously there's been developments with this business over the last few months with the changing of the official name, but it's still identified with Milwaukee, and so it's a sad day here in the city, and we're just hoping to get some word on what exactly happened here in about the next 15 minutes. Back to you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Lauren Linder, again standing by for Chief Morales and other law enforcement agencies to come to the podium and speak to the public about what transpired at the Molson Coors campus. We have, again, team coverage of this incident from the beginning when the first calls came through about 2:15. Steve Shamraz is live at 37th and Highland, I believe, where you can have a great vantage point of the headquarters where you're seeing a number of people exiting the building.
Yeah, this is probably the best feeling they've had all day, Shannon, is they are now finally in their cars and driving away from the headquarters here of Molson Coors. You're looking at the driveway on Highland Avenue. Police are funneling them that way to the west is what you're looking at right there, because to the east, everything is barricaded. There's a couple of cars that are going to be able to get through. Nope. They must have opened it. I must have to look over my shoulder here, because now we've got traffic moving both directions as they are obviously now in a pretty concerted effort of letting people in this building go home. From what I've been able to cobble together from reading the transcripts of the Broadcastify recordings, some of which we've been sharing over the air, it appears that the building where this took place is at 40th and State. And so this being 37th and Highland, several blocks removed, of course, would be locked down as a precaution during the chaos of an active shooter situation, but is several blocks removed from the actual building where it took place. So everybody in this building, while they are obviously going to be shaken by what happened today, this building not directly involved, as far as we know, with the shooting in the building at 40th and State. So they are now being turned loose and able to go home for the night. Law enforcement vehicles have been clogging the streets around 37th and Highland for the last almost 4 hours now since this started, and no sign of them leaving anytime soon, as they have probably a lot of work to do inside that building, gathering evidence and making sure they have pieced everything together as best they can to wrap up the investigation portion of this. We haven't seen the medical examiner come through here either. Obviously, they probably would have come in a little bit further south of here on State Street. But again, police have this area locked down very well. The only people moving right now in or out of here are employees of Molson Coors, who are now thankfully able to go home at the end of their day. Guys?
And those employees shaken by what happened at a place they call work. And now we are hearing from the President of the United States about this shooting in Milwaukee. Just moments ago, here's what the President said from the White House.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you. Before I begin, I'd like to extend my deepest condolences to the victims and families in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Earlier today, a wicked murderer opened fire at a Molson Coors Brewing Company plant, taking the lives of 5 people. A number of people were wounded, some badly wounded. Our hearts break for them and their loved ones. We send our condolences. We'll be with them. And it's a terrible thing, terrible thing. So our hearts go out to the people of Wisconsin and to the families. Thank you very much.
What has happened is there was a horrific shooting that has occurred. We're urging all residents and people in this area to stay away from this area simply because of traffic diversions and things like that. But they are continuing their sweep to make sure that nothing more is occurring. But again, it is a horrible, horrible day for the employees here. It is a very rough day for anybody who is close to this situation.
All right, and that was Mayor Tom Barrett, one of the first city officials on scene after learning of the mass shooting at the brewery on the city's northwest side. Vinny?
Yeah, we also heard from the alderman for the district, Alderman Russell Stamper, 15th District Alderman. Let's listen into some of his comments. All right, well, while we wait for the alderman to get queued up here, we're looking live here at, we expect to be, oh, all right, we have the alderman now.
And it's a horrible situation, and, you know, I'm just here to see what I can do and lend a hand of support. And it's just sad, so just looking for the outcome, and the mayor said it all. We're going to wait and be patient and see what comes out of this.
Do you know Alderman Stamper calling on everyone to be patient as we wait to find out more, and we will know more in the next few minutes because we're expecting to hear from Chief Morales on this tragedy that has unfolded at Molson Coors. I know Rebecca Clough is standing by as well. And Rebecca, we are expecting to hear from the police chief. Any others that will be at this news conference?
Coming to you.
Sorry, Charles, I lost you there for a second. But yes, a press conference is about to get underway here at the corner of 35th and State, right here off the Molson Coors campus now. And as we pulled up to this area where we expect to have a news conference underway, we actually came in with someone who put on the FBI jacket. I didn't recognize him as the current special agent in charge, but it looked like another agent just joining here with this conversation. Now, behind me here, you can see that we have a lot of police cars all lined up, but what we're noticing, we're starting to see some of those peel out, kind of go different directions. It kind of is telling us we're getting close to having some of the leaders come out here and address the media, and we also know that there are quite a few of those agents and the police officers here have left the area to go to other scenes, to go to search other areas of this city. That happens when an active shooter situation is underway. And so we are here at 35th and State just waiting for the FBI, the Milwaukee Police Department, and other members of this task force here to kind of give us the update on what has happened inside Molson Coors this afternoon.
All right, Rebecca Clough reporting live for us there. We have been talking with Molson Coors employees who were leaving campus, who were willing to share their emotions and their difficult day with us. So I want to hear a couple of comments from them now.
Well, I was at my desk and I got the email about the active shooter, so I left my desk and was checking my email on my phone. I got more notifications and more notifications, so they were keeping us up to date really well. They just told us shelter in place, so we sheltered in place. We tried to stay together and made sure everybody was accounted for, and we just did our best to wait it out. But we had safety captains who were handling the situation, who made sure that everybody was there and kept everybody together. And
who knew what to do in a situation?
Where did you take cover? We took cover in a conference room. Yeah.
For how long?
We were in for about 2 hours, I think. I think it was like 2 hours. Yeah.
Was it emotional in there? Were people upset, worried, scared?
Just trying to stay on top of the situation. I mean, because we're in corporate, we have a lot of people who are relatively high up in the company, so they made sure that the attitude and that the level in there was very kind of rational and just keeping abreast of the situation.
And you can hear the emotion in her voice. It gives me goosebumps as she's describing what she endured during those 2 hours of being sheltered in place. But one thing I also heard was they had a plan. Yep. They had captains to know what to do to keep them calm in that situation. I also want to bring back, you know, we talk about the rivalries of brewing companies. Molson Coors is the second largest U.S. brewing company, but Anheuser-Busch InBev has now put out a statement on Twitter to say, we do not condone the violence that occurred earlier today at Molson Coors headquarters in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We stand with our fellow brewers and extend our sincere condolences to those affected and their families. It says a lot when someone in your industry reaches out to say, we are thinking of you in this time of need. We are just about 4 to 10 minutes away from a press conference with law enforcement agencies, and hopefully that will include not only the chief of police, Alfonso Morales, but our sheriff, Ernell Lucas, and other other law enforcement agencies, including the ATF, FBI, who have been on scene along with the fire department to give us some insight about what took place this afternoon at Molson Coors Brewing Company.
More reaction coming in from our Democratic presidential candidates, as we heard from the president just a few moments ago. But Pete Buttigieg also responding. Senator Elizabeth Warren has already sent a response. And Gabrielle Giffords, who has become a national spokesperson on gun violence after being a victim of a mass shooting at a public place. And so clearly this story is touching so many people across the country. As this story and more people learn about what is happening. Tom Durian has been our guy just outside Molson Coors headquarters, taking us through what has been a horrific day for those employees.
Yeah, Charles, you know, we're standing here on the Highland Boulevard in front of Molson Coors. As you mentioned, this is the area that's been on lockdown for much of the day. You know, the people inside these buildings knew something was going on. You just heard from that employee that was in here, but they didn't know the unspeakable horror that was happening just, you know, a few buildings over. But here, these people had been on lockdown for now more than 3 hours and just finally starting to leave. I can tell you that just as you came to us, the traffic did start to kind of calm down here. Folks have left the office building here, and I'm looking back over now at the parking garage that we went through. Still a lot of cars in there, and I can tell you that there were some people that worked down in the Miller Valley there that were down near kind of where this happened. They walked all the way around earlier to get to their cars, so I assume that there are some vehicles here that still belong to the folks that work down in the area where the shooting may have occurred. But again, this area right here, the traffic on this street closed off. Only the people that are only going back and forth here are the employees of Molson Coors, as they leave this area and head home for the day on what no doubt has been an awful day for all of them.
An awful day indeed. As we await for Milwaukee's police chief, I want to see if we still have Steve Peterson on the line, because what we are going to learn here will be our first details of what the police department and other in law enforcement know about this situation. And Steve, as we wait for this, what is it that you would expect the police chief, the information he would want to convey at this hour?
Well, I would think that he would certainly want to convey that the situation has ended and that there's no longer a threat to the Molson Coors campus and the community, which I think everybody pretty much knows right now, but it always helps to have that leadership authority conveying that message. Other than that, I think he's going to give. I think he's going to give a very brief statement, and we're not going to get a whole lot, and that's just because from now the investigation side of the house is just beginning, and there's just information that they're not going to comment on very quickly until they're absolutely sure. So I think he may lay out a little bit of a timeline, and that's going to be pretty much it, I think.
The timeline here is critical and important in terms of how things unfolded. There certainly, Steve, will be a lot of questions about the shooter. Who is the shooter? What provoked the shooter? How much of that information would come out at a situation at this early in a investigation?
I think very little, if not any, because the investigators are just getting that information right now. They're cultivating that information about this shooter. So I'd be very, very surprised if there was any details about the shooter, who he is at this point. Obviously, that's information that's going to come out later, but I would be very surprised if it comes out now.
We're talking with former Waukesha County Detective Steve Peterson, offering us some perspective on what we're seeing, what we have seen, and what we expect to hear from authorities here momentarily. Steve, I'm curious if you caught any of that interview with any of the interviews that we've done with employees who talked to us about their training. I have somebody close to law enforcement who's telling me that Miller Coors did do active shooter training, and it appears from this person's perspective that they followed it to a T that could well have saved lives today. Is that your observation, hearing the things that people are talking about?
Well, just hearing that one interview, absolutely. It sounded like that there was a plan. They notified the employees with whatever protocols and electronic means that they have in place. And most importantly, the employees heeded to those warnings and immediately went to seek a place of shelter, and then having those assigned captains, if you will, to make sure that the employees are following the directions of the alerts that are being put out. At least leads me to believe that they had a plan in place, and again, most importantly, it sounds like the employees were following it.
Yep. All right. We are now hearing that, not surprisingly, that this news conference has been pushed to 6:30. And Steve Peterson, as you know, being on the public information side of this, knowing that the members of the media clamoring for every new detail and new piece of information. But this speaks to really getting the details on what has been could have been a multiple location scene, certainly multiple victims, and just the effort unfolding here on not only the investigation side, but at least informing the community on here's what we know now. And you got to get it right when you get it that first chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably what's going on. You're having not only the leadership of the Milwaukee Police Department, but the leadership of the FBI and other state and local agencies that are there in support of this event, and they're all going to be on the same page. And I think that you're absolutely right, Charles. When Chief Morales comes out there, he wants to speak and know absolutely what he's telling the community is factual and the best information that they have right now.
All right, Steve Peterson, we will have you stand by waiting for this news conference as well. And Shannon, as we have worked through some of these types of events where we're involved in a mass shooting, where details are unfolding. Yes, we are 3 hours going into maybe 4 hours into this particular shooting, and we do want to know a lot of information.
But we realize that it's not Chicago PD, it's not Chicago Fire. You know, it's not a 30-minute episode that we get information as instantaneously as we do in television. But in television news, we sit and we're able to gather that information as it comes in through the newsroom as well as through our sources.
Plus, we are dealing with loss of life. Someone has lost potentially a father, a brother, an uncle, a grandpa, a mother, a sister, a daughter, a son. There is loss of life here. And I think, Sean Gallagher, where you are, you have been hearing from some of the folks from Molson Coors about the personal impact and the personal tragedy associated with this mass shooting.
Yeah, Charles, like a lot of people feel with their jobs, you get to know those people very well. You oftentimes spend more time with those employees than you probably do with your own family. It might sound weird that this company that is so large, that is still the same thing. They all see each other and they spend so much time together. And one of those employees right here with me now, we have Selena. You were just arriving to work when all of this happened. How did you feel when you came in?
I was just wondering what was going on.
Did you hear anything when you were coming in?
Not until I was told to go back to the visitor center.
Those moments, what was going through your mind?
I was shocked, surprised. Just wondering what happened.
Yeah. Have you had any of those questions answered so far in the last few hours?
Not really. Not just speculation.
Yeah. Have you heard from more friends that you do know that were in?
Just a few.
Are you still waiting to hear from a few people?
I'm waiting to hear.
What's going through your mind with that?
I think that's the worst part, not knowing. I think tomorrow we'll know a lot more.
Tomorrow, when you go back to work, how do you do that?
We do. I don't even know what's happening with that. Yeah.
Is it going to be hard to walk through those doors?
Oh, yeah.
You were telling me earlier there are a lot of employees there, but you guys are pretty tight-knit. What is the bond amongst all the employees there?
Well, we work together every day, sometimes 7 days a week.
So how has it been here today? Kind of when you first saw some of the people that you hadn't heard from, what were those moments?
Just happy to see them, that they were okay. People checking in, making sure they were okay.
Are you guys kind of sharing stories about what they experienced?
Yeah.
What are you hearing from them?
Just everyone's feeling the same way. Just wondering what's going on, who, why.
I imagine it's that why. That's the lingering question for you. Well, I appreciate you sharing some of this with me. I know, obviously, a very tragic time, something that nobody that worked there would have expected would have happened, and everybody really trying to cope with it and, like Selena said, figure out that why. As everybody here at Spitfires on State, coming here as a sanctuary. This is a place that a lot of those employees came after all of this happened. A lot of them didn't have their keys, their wallet, their purse, anything. This is the place that they came to bond with one another. But for now, we'll throw it back to you guys in the studio.
Who and why? Two questions that linger at this hour as we await for the Milwaukee Police Chief to provide us new information, as we have promised. That is the expectation tonight, that we will get our first look inside what the Milwaukee Police Department encountered when they first arrived on the scene. And Shannon, you have had, let me send it to Carol Meekins, who is also monitoring more response coming from not only around the country, but right here in Milwaukee.
Yeah, you know, Charles, we expect the response that we've gotten from many of our political leaders, but we also are getting responses from other places, like chief competitor Anheuser-Busch tweeted, "We condemn the violence that occurred earlier today at Molson Coors headquarters in Milwaukee. We stand with our fellow brewers and extend our sincere condolences to those affected and their families." Also, we got a tweet from the Milwaukee Brewers. "Our thoughts and prayers are with our friends at Molson Coors after today's tragic event." So really, this transcends, you know, who worked where, or who you are, where you're from. This is basically something about humanity, and we all have our hearts heavy at this hour when we think of the fact that families are hurting and lives are shattered. We also want to point out, we've just gotten word that Governor Evers plans to speak at 6:45 this evening. So basically the entire state of Wisconsin in mourning, as well as people around the country joining in to send their condolences to this tragic, horrific, awful incident that took place today. Charles, Shannon, back to both of you.
Yeah, clearly the governor wanting to wait until police provide some new details as well. Shannon, I know you've had a chance to sit down with Chief Morales and talk about this is a job he wanted. This is a job he wants. This is a man who grew up in Milwaukee. This is his city. And he has been so challenged as a chief to deal with so many things. And now here he is dealing with a mass shooting. He does appear to be ready for these moments, but they are challenging.
Oh, most definitely. Not only does he have to stand tall to be able to convey the information that he has to be able to convey, but he also has to be there to console also the officers who have to investigate these types of crimes and what they see. And what we've learned from many of the officers, you know, there is a sense of PTSD that goes along with this job, and that they have to be able to compartmentalize a lot of what they do at work and leave it there. But they say they never leave. It never leaves their mind, right? It's always imprinted in their mind. But they are getting more and more help from psychologists to help them deal with those situations. So I would say Chief Morales has definitely had his hands full since taking on this job and getting a second term. But as we will see shortly in just a few moments, we will see a police chief who will not only tell us what we need to know, but will also guide us through what the next phase of this investigation looks like. We want to be able to continue to keep you abreast of what's happening as we wait for that news conference at 6:30.
Let's hear again from some of the employees who've been filing out. Boy, last hour or so, it really looked like they began leaving in earnest. We understand that there could have been as many as 1,000 or more employees on the full campus there at Miller Coors at the time of this shooting. So it was quite some time before they began to be dismissed. But as they've been leaving, some of them have been willing to share their thoughts and emotions with us.
We really didn't hear much at all. We were up above this, what they call the stables.
Okay.
And so that's more of a training area and health center, and
so just like sit in a room.
Right, we were just waiting in a room and protocol, and you know, we've had some active shooter training down here, so we were just you know, following our training and just staying put until the police came and got us.
So hearing from the employees, obviously they have been trained and are aware of how to handle a situation like this. And Steve Shamraz, as you see more and more employees walking out of that headquarters today, they have to be thinking back about, one, that they had this kind of training to help in this situation, but wondering who didn't get out, who's not going home tonight?
Yeah, they're probably a family a lot like we are, and they all think about each other on the tough days, and this being the imaginable for everybody who works here at the brewery complex. Most of the cars have now left the parking lot. There are no more headlights pulling out or people walking out in groups. The first word that something was wrong today came out in an email blasted out to everybody across the company, both here and at other locations around the country where they have offices. The subject line was MKE active shooter, and that had to be one of the most terrifying things that they have ever seen, to know that somewhere in this Milwaukee complex somebody was armed and opening fire on their friends, their coworkers, people they pass in the hallway sometimes. But the cars have left the parking lot here. At least this portion of the complex here at 37th and Highland is wound down for the night. It's just law enforcement here keeping watch. Again, the main presence of law enforcement a couple blocks away from here in the 4000 block of State Street in one of the buildings there on that main part of the brewery, the one we drive through when it's all lit up at Christmas time. That part of the brewery is what is now lit up tonight with lights of police cars and flashlights as investigators are pouring through trying to piece together what exactly happened here today. But here at 37th and Highland, most of the employees, at least from what I can tell looking at the parking lot, very thankfully have been able to go home for the night, guys.
Well, a big piece of what may have happened, Steve Shamrise, thank you for that report, could be on the northwest side of Milwaukee, where reporter Kristen Byrne is standing by. And Kristen, you've been watching a pretty large area blocked off in a location that we believe is connected to the shooting at Miller Coors.
Yes, Vinny, and we're waiting on official confirmation. So we're waiting to get information from that news conference happening in about now. We're hearing at about a half an hour or so we can find out addresses, names, and things like that to piece this all together. But yes, from what I can tell you, we're in a neighborhood on the northwest side of the city of Milwaukee, and we're led to believe that the police presence that is here, and in specifically centered around a home here in this neighborhood, is connected to the mass shooting that happened at Molson Coors early this afternoon around 2:30. So we've been here since early this afternoon. Now the sun is down, but the police lights are still up. The police tape is still up. I will say they took off down some of the police tape, so we have a little bit more close access to the home that has the lights on inside. That's the home where police have been going in and out of for a good portion of the afternoon. Some of the activity has died down, but the police presence remains on scene. We've seen neighbors just coming home. Some kids are getting off of school late this afternoon, and now people are getting off of work, asking us, what's going on here? What exactly is happening? From what we're saying, we're just telling them we're learning this as you're learning this, and what we're trying to piece it together. But from what we know, we're led to believe that the police presence here is connected to what happened to the shooting. Now, I will say we did speak with a neighbor recently who told us that a man who lives at the home where she saw police going in and out of is an employee at Molson Coors. So that was new information we heard from that neighbor. Again, that's just one neighbor telling us that information. Other people we have asked, do you know who lives there? Do you know anything about that home? And they don't. So we're still trying to, talk with more people. A lot of people kind of staying indoors. It's a winter night. But of course, when they first came home from work asking us what's going on, seeing, pretty unsettling to come home and see a lot of police tape and a lot of police in your neighborhood. We'll let you know if we learn anything new. Back to you guys.
You are right about that. Heading home, a lot of folks are getting home from work tonight, settling down to either watch some TV, have dinner, and are watching the news here and are learning more and more about this horrible day at Molson Coors where there was an active shooting situation. We do hear from the President of the United States, who gave us his first comments about this shooting about 45 minutes ago and talked about that he knew of 5 people being killed. We heard from the mayor, who suggested that there were multiple fatalities, and so we are waiting. We do know the situation that among the dead is the shooter. And as you can imagine, a lot of politicians are weighing in on this. So let's begin with Senator Johnson saying, monitoring this frightening situation at an iconic Milwaukee brewery. Prayers go out to everyone affected.
And then, of course, Representative
Gwen Moore.
Gwen Moore, the Milwaukee Police Department is investigating the scene, which is still active. My heart is with the victims. I am praying for everyone impacted by this tragedy.
And then here's another statement that we have from United States Senator from Wisconsin, Tammy Baldwin. Gun violence has taken too many lives in Milwaukee. The mass shooting today is heartbreaking.
And of course, Gwen Moore, this is her area. More from Tammy Baldwin here. I want to thank the first responders who ran into harm's way and saved lives. My office is standing by to help MKE, Milwaukee community, in the wake of this tragedy. As I was mentioning, Representative Gwen Moore, this is her congressional district, and so she has been briefed and kept on top of what these new developments are. As I continue to monitor a live feed coming into our newsroom from where the news conference will take place. One thing that is very noticeable as people are getting into position from this live location is that it's not just the normal TV stations that are now covering this story. The national networks have now jumped into this story, getting a text from a friend who lives in the area saying he has a sister living or a relative living in Greece and was texting him about this particular situation. And so as you can imagine, Carol, the world is learning about another mass shooting, and this one is in our backyard, a place so important to the fabric of Milwaukee, a place that has been part of who we are as a city. What are you now hearing, Carol?
Well, you know, people are reacting to this from all over the world, really. I mean, you know, Miller or Molson Coors, they're brands that are known all over the world. We just got a tweet that I want to share with you from Governor Evers. We are learning more details about what happened at Molson Coors earlier today. What we do know, though, is that more lives were lost in a mass shooting in Wisconsin. Our hearts go out to the families of those whose lives were senselessly taken. All of the folks and workers at Molson Coors and Milwaukee community, we grapple with another act of violence that will have long-lasting consequences for this community as well as our state. We are hearing from, and you know, just people, we were told that many people have friends and relatives that worked at the Molson Coors today, and they were texting them from inside, letting them know they were okay. Imagine the fear of the people inside today that had to let their loved ones, well, luckily we're letting their loved ones know they were okay. But it has just been a tremendously difficult and really heartbreaking day for everybody here in Milwaukee and in the state of Wisconsin and the country for that matter.
All right, Carol.
All right, we appreciate that update, Carol Meekins. Again, we just want to give you an update. We are waiting moments away from a news conference with Police Chief Alfonso Morales and with Mayor Tom Barrett. We were just given the about 3-minute warning a few seconds ago. I also see that DA Chisholm is on scene as well with a number of firefighters standing around him, and you can see there Chief Morales waiting in the wings to approach the news and give us an update on what transpired this afternoon. We are now at the 6 o'clock hour, 6:20 to be exact. This shooting taking place a little bit after 2 o'clock when we first got word with scanner traffic of shots fired at the Molson Coors Brewing Company. That put 2 buildings on lockdown, the brewery as well as the headquarters. We have been able to speak to a number of employees who were able to leave from the headquarters, and them explaining the chilling moments that they were locked down for several hours as they awaited the all clear from police. And we are now awaiting to hear more information about what transpired. Why did someone walk into a workplace and begin to shoot? How many people were shot? How many people were injured? And the impact this will have on this brewing company.
All right, Charles, you want to go through the roll call here of who we can see getting ready to go? Obviously, Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett there on the left, Police Chief Alfonso Morales in the middle.
The fire chief is there, and the FBI, the new FBI guy is there. And also, I mean, this is all the top brass.
Right, and this is also the special agent in charge from the FBI and the Milwaukee headquarters, the newly appointed SAC.
And this is what you would expect in a situation as high profile as this, to hear from a number of folks. But the key person at the center of all of this will be Chief Morales as he awaits the briefing that we now expect will begin at 6:30, and then following that, we are going to hear from Governor Evers, who also will weigh in on this tragic shooting and this day that has unfolded in front of us in Milwaukee as law enforcement learns more about the shooter and the shooting that happened at Molson Coors.
And we would be remiss if we don't mention that both of the assistant police chiefs of the Milwaukee Police Department are in the ranks with Chief Morales. That would be Assistant Chief Brunson and newly appointed Assistant Chief Regina Howard.
Yeah, she'd be the shorter woman there in the middle there of the scene. Also Milwaukee Alderman Russell Stamper, from whom we heard earlier, 15th District Alderman. This falls. He's got a part of his district that kind of takes a big dip down near Highland and actually encompasses the Miller Coors campus. So this is his aldermanic district.
So Vince and Shannon, let's walk people through, because what we're going to get here, if you're just getting home, trying to get updated, a timeline of what we best know happened at Molson Coors, that sometime after 2 o'clock, based on information from Broadcastify and other people on the scene, that there was an active shooter situation. The first responders getting on the scene described a scene that was not safe, and that they knew at least of one shooting victim, and that there was still an active shooting going on. As the minutes and hours unfolded, we learned that there were multiple fatalities, including the shooter has also been killed. What we don't have is a definitive number on the number of fatalities. But Vince, as you talked to sources, the early indication was that there were multiple casualties.
Right, and so many of you have probably been following online in different ways, getting updates on your phone from various sources. It was Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel who went with the 7 people dead, including the shooter. President of the United States, perhaps in getting new information directly from authorities, perhaps not, maybe from some other source, and we'll find that out in the next several minutes. But he said it was 5 people dead. The other thing that we did hear from the president was that multiple other people were injured. That's the other number that we really haven't put out there. I don't know at what point does it become more or less tragic. You have multiple people who've been shot dead in this terrible situation, but certainly it matters to each and every person who was injured, every person who is going to be mourned. You mentioned the Broadcastify, Charles, which again for our viewers is trying to bring this up. For our viewers, that's how we monitor radio traffic, right? And they put it out. This is dispatch or perhaps other officers communicating with one another. There's a chilling line that was transcribed from those communications from early in this process. And this appears to be an officer who was on scene. And this officer is on the radio saying, "There are patients in the back of my squad. I'm trying to get the fire department directed back here." And it kind of plays to what you both have been talking about in this narrative, the chaos at the moment, not knowing exactly what they were going into, those emergency responders. Here appears to be a police officer who's evacuating patients to his squad car, trying to make sure that they're safe for the moment and then get them emergency medical treatment.
And so, Shannon, as you were arriving here, coming into work too, you noticed the sense of something going on in this particular location. And what we have learned in the hours that have unfolded is this large police presence with highly trained law enforcement going step by step throughout this massive campus to see if there was anything else attached with this active shooter being on the scene.
And again, the reporter and me followed for a minute, detouring from work just to kind of see what was going on, because it was a mass presence of paramedics and police with lights on, and because again I'm familiar with that area, living just around the corner at one time, and it was clear that I was not going to be able to get too close to the action. But I could tell you, again, seeing those first responders speeding through the red lights to get to the scene definitely gave me pause to know that something serious was going on. And then of course I looked on my cell phone and saw that there was an active shooter or critical situation, and of course my phone goes dead. But after that, nonetheless, being in that scene at that time, you always feel the adrenaline, and I can surely think that all those people going in, the first responders going into danger, had that adrenaline and had that sense of we must protect who we can, but yet we don't know what's behind the door.
And as we have pushed and pressed for new information, we are about to get it, and we ask you to be patient as we have to try to get the newest and the best information coming from the Milwaukee Police Department. It is scheduled to begin at 6:30. We do see that all the key players are standing by and should be approaching this very large, growing contingent of local, state, and national media now covering this mass shooting that has happened in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Well, as you look at the microphones, Charles, you're going to see some logos that you don't recognize if you're from this area, and these are obviously other places. Our colleagues in Madison, folks who come up from Chicago, and they're reporting for the networks as well who are covering this news story. So this is national, if not international news. And not that it wouldn't be otherwise, but particularly we've talked about this with Milwaukee being the site of the Democratic National Convention in July, in the spotlight for the best possible way, we would hope, and officials have been preparing for that. But that just adds to the national interest in this story, because Milwaukee has been on the radar and people have been talking about this city, and they're going to be talking about it through the year.
We are going to be on the radar leading right up to that convention in the middle of July, and so much of the city's attention has been about that convention and the impact it will have on this city, and the big moment, political moment, to have so many people in our city to talk about the Democratic presidential election. Kristen Byrne has been monitoring developments as well. As we've been talking about, the investigation continues into the who and why and what, and she has been focusing on some of that. Kristen?
Charles, yes, and just minutes ago, really just a few seconds ago, a Milwaukee police officer came over and approached the media, letting us know that they would be providing the folks of the media that are at this particular neighborhood on the northwest side of the city an update as to what the police activity and why there has been police activity in this particular neighborhood. So we're waiting just on that, hoping to get that update very soon, telling us that a police captain will come over and just talk to us and let us know exactly what is going on. So what we can tell you is that we've been here since early this afternoon. We've seen people coming home from work, even some kids in this neighborhood just, of course, coming home, seeing a lot of police tape, seeing a lot of police presence, wondering what is going on. We have been trying to piece it all together. We're not giving the address of where we're at right now because police have not confirmed that. We don't want to jeopardize any of their investigation, but we're led to believe that this big police presence in this neighborhood is connected to the shooting at Molson Coors. I will tell you, a neighbor that we spoke with earlier today also telling us that she knows the neighbor, that the home that they have been focused in on, who lives there, is an employee at Molson Coors. So that's where you see the home there where the lights are on. Police have been going in and out of that home. A mobile command unit was on scene as well. And it looks like they're going to come over here right as we speak and give us a briefing so I can kind of talk with you until we get that and we can listen in on that. But that's kind of where we're at this afternoon and now this evening, finding out what's going on, why they're here, and finding out what, if any, this person's home or who lives there and what way it's connected to the Molson Coors shooting. Are you going to be giving any update? No. Okay, so is anyone from the police department giving us an update?
Not here.
Not here.
That's why I just came to tell you.
Okay, so what can you tell us?
Anything that's going to come out of the police department is going to be coming from the PIO's office.
Okay.
I know they're doing media briefings at the, I don't know exactly where it is, but
okay.
Sharonda should send that information out to you. I just want to come and let you know. You can be here and get shots all you want.
Sure.
There's going to be no statements.
No statements. Okay. So we're being told, okay, we just wanted to make sure what was going on. So a police captain has just informed us that they will not be giving a police briefing to this location. So we're finding out we have to go through the public information's office and any, I'm just listening right now. For the staging area. So again, so there is a new update now. We're not going to be getting an on-camera interview with the police right now. We're going to be having to go through, I believe, where Rebecca Klopp is as she's waiting to get an update on what's going on. So we won't hear it from here, but we'll try to get information from that other location. All right, guys, we'll send it back to you.
That's our Kristen Byrne. Yeah, the update is there's not going to be an update there. You know, in this situation, you want to make sure that everything is together, right? And that you're getting your official source from one spot. So it sounds like that's what they're trying to do. Also being told that they're trying to get the governor, who is going to have his news conference literally a couple of blocks away, to go ahead and join everybody else at this location. And that may be one of the reasons for the holdup here, is that these various officials and the people that work closely with them are trying to coordinate. So everybody's together, right?
And we are also then going to be coordinating our effort to get all of this information to you. And one of our reporters helping in that regard has been Sean Gallagher, who's been on scene nearby at a nearby bar where other folks have gathered. And Sean, I have noticed in the background occasionally when we go to you, people just hugging each other, and it's about the only thing they can do right now is to hold on to one another.
Yeah, Charles, everybody here really embracing. Everybody that I have been talking to, they say the employees here at Molson Coors are like family. It is a big company, but they say they basically know everybody that's there. And another person who knows them is the owner of Spitfires on State, Andy. You've been talking to a lot of people here, people that you probably see pretty regularly. How are you holding up with all this?
I'm just happy they have a place to go, someone to talk to. Our main concern is to make sure that they have somewhere to make sure they can get a hold of their family, have a few drinks, stay warm. And, you know, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that they're okay. Yeah. You know, it's their friends, it's their family, it's their people they see.
Yeah. I know a lot of people that I've talked to, they say the hardest part is they don't have answers right now. You've been talking to people about their experiences. What are people sharing with you about the moments that they had?
Just that it was very hectic. They were very happy for how MPD and everyone else responded. Said it could have got a lot worse, but the best part was is that everyone was there for each other. You know, and at the end of the day, it's the same thing we're offering. We want people to come here and want to be able to find ways home. They don't have their keys, they can't get in their house, they can't get to their cars. You know, it's we just want to be here for them.
Yeah, I mean, it was really like a flight or flight kind of thing. Everybody was leaving to get out of there. Well, how are people feeling right now? It's a few hours later. I've talked to some people, they say they actually feel worse because they still don't have answers. Some people starting to cope with it. What are you hearing from people?
Well, obviously, not knowing who it was, if it was a friend, somebody, a coworker, it's hard, you know, not getting a hold of somebody, but they just like to have their family around them, and that's, you know, the people they work with. That's people here, it's people in the community. Just everyone needs to know that, you know, people lost their lives today, and at the end of the day, everyone just needs to reach out and give each other a hug. And remember, tomorrow might not happen.
Yeah, you couldn't have put it better myself. Really appreciate you letting us come in here and talk to everybody. And I will say, a lot of people do appear to be leaving at some point, probably going home to their true families, aside from their work family, after this very hectic day. I will say, it was quite a sight when we first came in here. A lot of those neon orange or neon yellow jackets, and I immediately knew these are all Miller employees, and this was the place that they decided to come after all of this happened today, guys.
Charlie Gallagher, thank you. And I know as we are trying to move things around, I want to give the control room a heads up. Yes, thank you. That is the picture I wanted. And as we zoom in on that, you can see just all the TV stations that now have arrived here to cover this mass shooting in Milwaukee. I see a CNN logo, I see WGN, I see some others that are outside of our area. And as we are waiting for this news conference to begin, they're still trying to coordinate everyone to be there at the right time, and we will jump in as quickly and as soon as that happens. But Steve Peterson, tell me how the dynamics of a mass shooting like this and all the attention on it, how does it change now when it isn't just a local story? It becomes a national and in some cases an international story.
Yeah, and being a former public information officer, it becomes a real challenge to those types of media outlets. I used to kind of think of it, I said, well, when big TV comes to town, and you're seeing that right now. So not only does the Milwaukee Police Department and the Public Information Office for the Milwaukee Police Department have to provide information to the local Milwaukee media, but now they are probably being inundated with requests from national news media outlets and also throughout the world possibly. But my message would always be, and I think that's what you're seeing Milwaukee police do here, it's one message, one voice. So they're not talking about anything at that other scene where they're at. They're going to let everything come out from, looks like the anticipated news conference right now.
And we have seen that Governor Evers has just arrived, so that should tell us that we could be at any moment we should be hearing this particular news conference.
But let's send it out to Steve Shamraz, who is along also within the area with new information. Steve?
Yeah, Shannon and Charles, the CEO of Molson Coors sent an email to all of his employees around the company just a couple of minutes ago. It's time-stamped about 20 minutes ago. I'm going to read a bit of it to you here, and it does confirm some of the details that we have heard over the course of the day. It's from Gavin Hattersley to his employees. Earlier today, we received news of an active shooter on the Milwaukee Brewery campus. The police have since confirmed the shooter, who was an active brewery employee, is now deceased. There is no longer an active threat. Our employees are in the process of being released to go home to their families. This is, again, the email from Gavin Hattersley, the CEO CEO at Molson Coors. He continues, unfortunately, I'm devastated to share we lost 5 other members of our family in this tragic incident. The police are still working to notify their relatives, so I'm unable to provide any other information at this time. No words to express the deep sadness many of us are feeling right now. He says he's on his way to Milwaukee right now because in the hours and days ahead, the most important thing is we support and care for each other. We're closing our Milwaukee office for the remainder of the week, and the Milwaukee Brewery will remain shut down for the time being. To ensure our people have time to cope with today's events, we ask everyone be respectful of how our colleagues in Milwaukee are feeling during this incredibly difficult time, and do what you can to be supportive. And then goes on to provide company resources for anybody who might need them. But again, confirming that the shooter here today, the CEO of Molson Coors, confirming the shooter here was an active employee at the brewery, and that 5 of their co-workers were killed today in this shooting here at the Molson Coors plant, just a couple blocks away from where I'm standing at 40th and State. So that is the email to the employees of this global company from their CEO, mourning the loss of 5 of their co-workers at the hands of one of their fellow employees. Confirmed through that email from the CEO, guys.
All right, Steve Shamraz giving us that latest information before our news conference with law enforcement while we still await that. But again, it's clear that the chief of Molson Coors is giving us kind of the who and the what, and that is that 6 people have died, including the shooter, who was an employee of the brewery. And now he says to help his employees mourn and to reflect, he's decided to close the headquarters for the remainder of the week, along with the brewery.
Some new reporting there, and the key word to use, active employee. Tom Durian, as you have been standing by outside Molson Coors, this gives them their first look at what actually happened today, and now knowing that this was the result of an active employee.
Yeah, Charles, I can't help but think about, my photographer and I were just going through our video right now of what we've seen over the last 4 hours or so since we've been here. And one of the things that stuck with me, in addition to all the police moving around, was the chaplains from the Salvation Army that showed up to go down and speak with people. You know, right now you can see behind me the parking lot is emptying or is empty of employees here at Molson Coors. They're headed home. They're going to have that reuniting with their family, which I'm sure will be emotional. But there were a lot of people that were right around this actual shooting as we get more information about where it happened.
And as you can see, Chief Morales stepping to the mic to speak to all the news that is here to get the latest update. Let's listen in.
Hello, all. I'm joined here today with the Mayor of Milwaukee, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, and leadership from local, county, and federal law enforcement agencies, along with the District Attorney and U.S. Attorney. Please keep in mind that this is an active and fluid scene, and the investigation is also ongoing and active. There is no threat at this time, and we will continue to investigate throughout the night. At approximately 2:08 p.m. on today's date, the Milwaukee Police Department responded to a call of a shooting at the 4100 block of West State Street. This is known as the Molson Coors Beverage Company, and for most Milwaukee residents, the Old Miller Brewery. Officers located the suspect, a 51-year-old Milwaukee man, deceased from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. At this time, we have located 5 additional deceased adult victims. The victims all worked at Molson Coors, and no members of the general public were involved. The victims' identities will not be released to the public until proper notifications have been made. No other individuals were injured at this time. Further information will be provided by the leadership of Miller Coors' executive team when they arrive, as they were all out of state and currently en route, which we're hoping to give you an update after 9 o'clock tonight. It's a terrible day for Milwaukeeans, and I pass on my condolences to the families of the employees of Miller and to the employees of Miller or Molson Coors. Again, I'd like to thank the Milwaukee Police Department, sworn, who responded quickly to attend, the FBI, the ATF, Department of Criminal Investigations, Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, the Marquette Police Department, and the Milwaukee Fire Department for their assistance. As I stated, we'll provide additional information. Please understand that Molson Coors is a large company with over 1,000 employees that were working when this occurred. We have several people we need to talk to, and we have to go through a roll call and identify who's missing, which is why we can't give you all this information currently. We'll have additional information and let you know when this scene becomes safe. I'm now going to pass the mic on to the mayor, and we'll have other leaders from our team here speak. Thank you, Mayor.
Identify yourself, sir.
Chief Alfonso Morales of the Milwaukee Police Department.
Good evening, I'm Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett. This is a tragic day for our city. This is a tragic day for our state. 5 families, 6 families actually, are grieving and will be grieving because of this horrific act of this individual. This is a time for us to think about those families, because there were 5 individuals who went to work today, just like everybody goes to work. And they thought they were going to go to work, finish their day, and return to their families. They didn't, and tragically, they never will. I want to thank the Milwaukee Police Department. I want to thank the Milwaukee Fire Department. I want to thank the Sheriff's Department, the FBI. I want to thank the District Attorney for responding when they were needed most. This is an unspeakable tragedy for our city. This is a community tragedy. And as we grieve for these families, we must remember the sacrifices that they made. We will have more information as the families are notified. We'll have more information as more employees are notified as to who the deceased are. But please keep in your prayers these individuals who lost their lives.
What's your name, Mayor?
My name is Mayor Tom Barrett. This is Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes.
Hey, Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, and we're here on the scene of another American tragedy, another senseless American tragedy, one that shouldn't have to happen. And unfortunately, it's in our backyard. And I hate to say that it's in our backyard once again. This is the 11th mass shooting in our state since 2004. And I especially want to thank the first responders who so bravely are still responding to the situation. I want to offer my condolences to the families, the friends, the co-workers of everybody involved, but I also want to issue a call, a challenge, because we shouldn't accept this. This is not the way that things should be, and we should never grow comfortable in the face of these repeated tragedies all across America, and especially right here at home. We have a duty to act. We have to be more responsible as a city, as a state, as a nation, and stop these preventable tragedies from happening. It doesn't happen anywhere else but here. And you know, I know a whole lot of people who I've socialized with, a lot of folks who work in those halls. I've spent time with them on my personal time, and during campaigns, I've made a lot of good friends, and I'm actually afraid to see whose lives were lost in this tragedy. And this is something, as the mayor said, there were 5 people who went to work and thought they would come home. And you think about the families of those individuals, people who just want to earn an honest living, and unfortunately will not be making it back home tonight. This is something that should rest heavily on all of our hearts, all of our minds moving forward. And again, I can't repeat enough the fact that this is something that we should never come to accept as a society. But thank you all for being here, and my heart goes out to everybody impacted by this. And now our Governor, Tony Evers.
Thanks, Mandela. I think at this time, I know it's really cold out, but just a short moment of silence. The hearts of the people of Wisconsin go out to the folks that were needlessly murdered at Molson Coors this afternoon. The First Lady and I will be praying tonight together for the lives that have been lost. It is a tragedy for Milwaukee, yes, but it's a tragedy for the entire state of Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a strong state. What happens in Milwaukee happens, it impacts people all across the state, from Cornucopia to Kenosha. And so my role here tonight is to bring as many prayers as I can carry and hearts of the people of Wisconsin to the losses that have occurred. Thank you.
Thank you. As I stated, at approximately 9 o'clock, we'll see if we can give you additional information as the leadership from Molson Coors arrives. They will have additional information. We are making family notifications. And again, this is fluid. We'll update you as we move on. Thank you very much.
Everyone is out of the building right now, all the workers that were in the lockdown mode. Is everyone out?
No, they're not. There's over 1,000 employees. There's multiple buildings, more than 20 buildings we have to secure. We have checkpoints that we're checking off each employee one by one. That's going to take several hours to do. So I can't tell you who's all accounted for, who's missing, who's not, and that's why as this continues, we'll get that to you.
Do you believe right now that this is a lone gunman or no?
It's too early to tell. We believe we have it contained. We believe that subject is down, but I can't give you additional information. It may change, but right now we believe the target is down. That's all I have for you. We'll give you more at 9 o'clock. Thank you very much. Thank you. We have somebody that can do a Spanish one as well for you. If you for a Spanish-speaking a statement, I have a PIO for you. Yes.
When you arrived on the scene, it was over?
There you have it. Chief Morales giving us the best information he has at this point in what he is describing as a still very active and fluid situation. But he does confirm 5 people who worked at Molson Coors are dead. The shooter, self-inflicted, also dead. So a total of 6, also a employee with Molson Coors. What we still don't know is why, what led up to this shooting today, and that's where law enforcement is right now in terms of investigating. But Shannon and Vince, what I did hear from him is still this process of trying to find out who's missing and who is accounted for. He talked about 1,000 employees and 20 different locations. And before I go to Shannon and Vince, Steve Peterson, I know you listened in on that news conference. What did you take away from what the police chief was telling us?
Well, kind of what I was talking about all through the afternoon is this is a huge campus, 1,000 employees, probably 1,000 employees plus, and this is going to be a long, methodical process of clearing all these buildings. The chief mentioned people are missing. I think what they're doing is they want to account for everyone that is assigned to a specific building and a work location. And, sometimes somebody was not in the building when this incident occurred, and they may not have known that at the time, so they have to track that down. So the chief is doing a good job as far as just basically saying this is what we believe right now, and you know what? We're going to come back at 9 o'clock, and we're going to tell you a little bit more as this whole process works its way out.
And definitely, we're waiting on that 9 o'clock hour because he says that the leadership from Coors Molson is coming in after learning they were out in Houston at the time of this all transpiring. But again, we did get a few of the clues we had been hearing trickling in through different sources. That one, it was an employee, possibly a disgruntled employee, and that 5 other people were shot and killed. But we need to note that one employee was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. So there doesn't seem to be any interaction with police of gunfire. But nonetheless, 6 people killed this afternoon, and a number of our law enforcement agencies speaking, as well as city officials.
Number I'm still waiting on is injured. You heard the president reference a number of people injured. You did not hear the chief of police talk about people who were injured but did in fact survive. So that's a number that we'll want sooner rather than later, obviously, as people may have been hurt but still survived this. You heard Rebecca Klopf report earlier about victims not being taken to Freighter, which is typical in a situation like this. I did have a report from someone who works at Aurora Sinai in downtown, that a number of victims, according to this source, were taken there, perhaps the injured. So we don't know how many people could have been injured and still survived this. That's a number that we need to hear. So if we don't hear before then, certainly at 9 o'clock.
And we're just talking about the physical injuries, the injuries you can see. But to talk about how many employees were actually in the space when this all transpired and what they saw and the emotional and mental injury this will have on them, I think it was imperative that the CEO of Molson Coors said, you know what, we're closing shop for today until the end of the week to give people time to deal with what has transpired.
Vince, the other clue we had was when you looked at Broadcastify, which is the radio traffic, the scanner traffic, and there was a description of someone, a police officer, indicating that there were people in his car that needed medical attention, though, right?
Right. It said, I have victims in the back of my squad trying to get the fire department down here to provide medical attention. So it's just not clear exactly what scene police came on when they arrived. And that perhaps is, just not something the chief was ready to talk about yet. Had to talk at some point, get some information out there for people in the neighborhood, for the families who have people who work at Miller Coors. You want to get that information out to the public. So that needed to happen sooner rather than later, but certainly a lot of questions that remain.
And Mayor Barrett saying there are 6 grieving families right now in Milwaukee, and Governor Evers calling for a moment of silence. Lauren Linder was at that location as well. And Lauren, clearly an emotional day and evening for Milwaukee.
Charles, it certainly is. I could even hear somebody crying in the back during that press conference who had to walk away from the mic stand. I've been here for, I want to say now, 4 hours, and it's just been crazy to see how this is all unfolded. The scene is still pretty active, but many of the cars that we saw here earlier tonight have left. And as you just heard, Chief Alfonso Morales says that 5 people are dead, 1 more, which includes the shooter who died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. They say that they're still trying to figure out people inside the building. They still haven't dealt with that situation all yet, but the mayor did say that this is an unspeakable tragedy for this city, because when you think about Molson Coors, you think of Milwaukee, you think of Miller Brewing, and so all of this just happening to unfold right inside of that facility, right on that campus. It's just devastating right now. And so the governor did come out here. He held a moment of, wanted to open his remarks with a moment of silence. Lieutenant Barnes also happened to mention, interesting to note, that this is the 11th mass shooting in Wisconsin since 2004. I mean, we're hoping that nothing like this happens again, but obviously today was just an unspeakable tragedy, as the mayor said. But still plenty of police vehicles out here, fire vehicles out here. We know that the CEO of Molson Coors is flying back here to Milwaukee, and that the facility will be closed for the rest of the week. And we're hoping that we'll be able to learn more on exactly what happened when the chief of police says that he's going to be speaking again, hopefully at 9 o'clock tonight. But for now, back to you guys.
Lauren, thank you for your commentary. We do appreciate it. Want to send it out to Sean Gallagher, who has been with a number of employees who were headed into work when they heard they had to turn around, and now they've been at a bar just a few blocks away. And describe how the scene was as we were all hearing from the chief of police what transpired earlier today.
Shannon, it was completely silent in here. Every single employee that has been in this bar for hours was sitting here very attentive, trying to listen to figure out those answers that they've been clamoring for hours after they were forced to leave from work after this tragic situation. You can see a number of people are still here at the bar. They are just trying again to comprehend this unthinkable tragedy, and a lot of tears were falling during that speech from Alfonso Morales, and Tom Barrett and all the other dignitaries were there as they learned 5 of their fellow employees, still unknown to many of them, are now gone. They will not be going back to work once they reopen the doors back for work as they continue this investigation. I've spoken with a lot of people who they've had moments of happiness and still moments of sadness as they're unsure of who they haven't heard from many people still, but they are getting those moments where there are those reunions and again hearing from the people that they didn't know if they would hear from again. But for now, we'll throw it back to you guys.
All right, Sean Gallagher, we appreciate that. As we have been doing all afternoon, we have been hearing from employees about those moments while they were there, sheltered in place as all of this was unfolding. So let's listen in to an employee that we spoke with.
Those moments, what was going through your mind?
I was shocked, surprised. Just wondering what happened.
Yeah. Have you had any of those questions answered so far in the last few hours?
Not really. Not just speculation.
Yeah. Have you heard from more friends that you do know that were in?
Just a few.
Are you still waiting to hear from a few people?
I'm waiting to hear.
What's going through your mind with that?
I think that's the worst part, not knowing. I think tomorrow we'll know a lot more.
Tomorrow, when you go back to work, how do you do that?
We do. I don't even know what's happening with that. Yeah.
Is it going to be hard to walk through those doors?
Oh yeah.
You were telling me earlier there are a lot of employees there, but you guys are pretty tight knit. What is the bond amongst all the employees there?
Well, we work together every day, sometimes 7 days a week.
So how has it been here today? Kind of when you first saw some of the people that you hadn't heard from, what were those moments?
Just happy to see them, that they were okay. People checking in, making sure they were okay.
Are you guys kind of sharing stories about what they experienced?
Yeah.
What are you hearing from them?
Just everyone's feeling the same way. Just wondering what's going on, who, why.
And imagine it's that why. That's the lingering question for you.
Yeah.
We're hearing again from a Miller Coors employee who was willing to share her emotions with us on this day and what she experienced. We wrapped up that news conference just a few minutes ago that featured, of course, Milwaukee Police Chief Alfonso Morales, Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett, Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes. We also heard from Governor Tony Evers. Let's listen to his remarks.
It is a tragedy for Milwaukee. It's a strong state. It happens in Milwaukee, it impacts people all across the state from Cornucopia to Kenosha. And so my role here tonight is to bring as many prayers as I can carry and hearts of the people of Wisconsin to the losses that have occurred.
Governor Tony Evers, and I believe this is the first time I've seen him in this particular situation where he has had to deal with an active or high crime situation, a mass shooting in Wisconsin, calling for a moment of silence and also saying he and the First Lady will be saying prayers tonight for all those who have died. Let's listen in again. This is our first comments, so we are going to pause there for a moment. We are, as there's still a number of other developments, and we want to let you know as we sign off here at 7 o'clock and let you go back into regular programming that Vince and Shannon, a very difficult night, still a lot of questions, but as we wait to hear from the CEO, who's already put out an emotional statement.
And who's on his way back to Milwaukee to speak, hopefully, to the press that's waiting.
Next time we expect to hear from officials at 9 o'clock. If anything happens significant before then, we will certainly break into programming here. You can continue to follow us online at tmj4.com and on our mobile platforms.
And we'll be here at Live at 10 as well.
Good night.